Morning. Today's Tuesday, June 5th, 2018. This is a regular meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioner Sobroff, Johnson, and Figueroa Villa are present, and we have a quorum.
Okay. I have a short statement to make. As you know, Mayor Garcetti made his selection of the next chief of the Los Angeles Police Department yesterday, and the choice is excellent. Chief Michael Moore is an outstanding leader, one of the finest, most experienced law enforcement professionals in America. As the mayor said yesterday, Chief Moore does not need to hit the ground running because he's already running. And in fact, Chief Moore isn't here this morning because he and Mayor Garcetti are already visiting with members of the community today in the community. We know that the outreach will continue in the days and weeks ahead, especially in communities that have borne the scars of past mistakes and where this department is working hard every day to build stronger relationships, better trust, and closer partnerships in every part of Los Angeles. And as Angelenos get to know Chief Moore better, I'm confident that they will see someone who has been a leader in this department at some of the most challenging times and has led in implementing reforms that have enabled our officers to build better trust with all Angelenos, especially in communities of color. As Connie Rice just said a few minutes ago on the radio, it's a natural baton handing off. A leader who has been a driving force behind changes in how we train officers and use of force, de-escalation, and implicit bias. Mike Moore is a leader and has a sharp mind. His mastery of this profession is helping this city reduce crime in every category. What I hope the community sees is not just one of the most well-qualified and best prepared people to ever become chief of the LAPD, but also a listener with a huge heart, extraordinary integrity, and fierce determination to serve and protect the lives, well-being, and rights of everyone in our communities, and to do the same for thousands of officers that he will lead into the future of LAPD. As Commissioner Johnson and I said yesterday, we want to congratulate the families and those who made the final cuts from 9 to 6 to 5 to 3 to 1. These are some of the top law enforcement people in America, and every one of them should be proud of participating in this detailed process. I want to thank all the commissioners for all the hard work it took to do what the charter said we should do, and especially want to thank Mr. Tefank for keeping us on the straight and narrow and participating, giving his input, which is based on many years of experience. Thank you. Let's move to Matt. Do you want to say something before we go? Okay.
And please let the record reflect Commissioner McLean Hill is now present.
Okay, good. Good morning.
We're in item number one.
Item number one, we have no comment cards on items E and F, I, J, M, and N. May we have a motion for approval on those?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have comments on E and
On 1A, we have Michael Novick and Mr. Herman.
okay, and also who have the comments on number
It's
F?
going to be both
Excuse me, the same two?
the same two.
Okay, so Mr. Novick, if you would do E and then F, we'll give you.
No, I'm sorry, sir. We have no comments on E and F.
I'm sorry. Oh, we're on 1A.
1A.
Okay.
Michael Novick and Mr. Herman.
Okay. And how about B, C, and D?
B, C, and D are Mr. Herman, and Mr. Novick has a card on D.
Okay. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, first I want to apologize. The last time I was up here, I misspoke. I said that you were recommending a serial killer cop. I said that on the basis of a report from the LA Times that said that Chief Moore had shot 2 people fatally. I understand now that.
Why
that
don't you
was-
stay on topic? So this is your
Okay.
last warning.
All
Let's
right.
stay on topic.
Just
Keep
trying to
moving.
apologize.
Okay. Apology accepted.
The topic of 1A is a donation of $2,800 from the Los Angeles Police Foundation for the benefit of the Media Relations Division. I think that the LAPD spends entirely too much money already on propaganda and on trying to massage the image of the department by convincing the people of the city that the killings that it carries out are in the public interest. And I think that accepting any more money from the Los Angeles Police Foundation is a continuing breach of conflict of interest because of Mr. Sobroff's relationship to that foundation. I think that the sum total this week of donations that you're accepting to the LA Police Department from the Police Foundation and others is over $55,000. And again, I would challenge anybody on the board to total up how much money week after week comes in over the transom from the foundation and other sources on top of the more than half of the city budget that the LAPD already uses up. I think that it's shameful that you're continuing to
Stay on topic. We're talking about one specific
yes, you're talking about the
contribution.
specific
Yeah, the
donation of the
specific
Media
one.
Relations Division. That's what I'm talking
Okay.
about. Media Relations is about the efforts of the police department to sell itself to the city and to the population, and it's part of what I've described to you before. Community policing as an effort at controlling the thinking of the population or the enemy. It's about militarized policing because community-based policing is the equivalent of psychological operations in the military, as they've said before, and therefore this Media Relations Division is engaged in propaganda and brainwashing of the public.
Next speaker.
Mr. Herman, please.
Does Herman have on A, B, C, and D?
Yes.
Okay, Herman, you can do all 4 of them. Do you hear me? Herman,
Pardon me, sir?
you can do all 4. A, B, C, and D.
Thank you. So polite. So what is the relationship with the department regarding backdrop and lighting equipment? You know, just at the staff budget report and the budget report of the LAPT, it reflected $22 million for overtime, and such a generous relative donation of that kind is unprecedented, especially when you're receiving from an outside relationship. I don't know if it's homophobic or what, but it's dealing with a benefit for Media Relations Division. I find that a conflict of interest, and under 42 U.S.C. 1983, hoorah, fuck you. Now, on item B, department's report, May 25th, relative monetary donations simply for close to $3,000. I don't want to give you the figures. You can read them yourself if you're intelligent enough. But the Los Angeles Police Foundation has used reimbursement expenses unrelative to crime fighting. How do I know that? How do I know that? Well, I am Batman to some, and to others, I'm an advocate. And so from the findings of the report, based on facts, public's points of view, is that such annual crime fighters violates the Bain Act. Because the moment you become a whistleblower under 52.1, choo choo, guess what? Guess what? You're asked to leave this meeting because you're stating facts for the record regarding crime fighters.
Okay, so stay on topic, will you? Please.
So the conference, in which was held some time ago, doesn't reflect my interest today for February 8th, 2018.
Okay. Yeah, you want to do
Thank
C?
you for the interruption.
You want to do C?
Yeah, I'll do the cunt C. C.
Stay on
I
to-
see the
stay on
report under
topic.
C for cunt dated May 25th, 2018. Relative to the fucking large canopy tent that we all need to keep homeless people and our department safe from the elements of heat and heat stroke. However, $5,000 from the Los Angeles Police Foundation was used during that annual police department memorial ceremony. As you see, I salute all officers, rank and file. I'm in ceremonial guard. representing the voters of California.
Want to stay on topic, please? Last warning.
So, in my relationship to the Los Angeles Police Department is to reflect how the benefits of employee assistance helps preserve administrative services so the Department of Justice doesn't have to come in and investigate crimes against humanity.
Okay, so you're off
On
topic
D,
there.
sir.
So we'll go to
Last
D.
item, D for Dick. Now that I am talking about 20 breaching shotguns modifications, we all know what shotguns are, right? 12 gauge, lock and load. However, Second Amendment says we do have a right to lock and load. And such modification kits to reduce a regular size shotgun to a violent criminal crime element shotgun is offensive. And we shouldn't abstract or object to the Second Amendment, that all officers should be readily prepared with any type of shotgun to defend against criminals in LA. And I again salute officers of this department, LAPD, regarding the $3,980 from the Los Angeles Police Foundation for the benefit of MD.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Novick on 1D.
Okay, so we have a motion for approval of items 1A, 1B, and 1C. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we're on item number 1D. Mr. Novick?
Yeah, 1D is a donation of $4,000 worth of modification kits for breaching shotguns, and I question the need to increase the level of force and violence available to the LAPD. I don't understand why they need shotguns, why they need breaching shotguns, when they need to modify those shotguns. I think that you need to figure out ways to disarm the police and to reduce the level of lethal violence and force that they use in their operations. So I would urge you to reject this donation from the LA Police Foundation. I think you need to find ways to substitute for shotguns, for handguns, for all the other lethal forms of violence that you allow the LAPD to use.
Thank you.
And we have Mr. Novick on 1G.
Okay, this was D.
D.
What else does Mr. Novick have cards in for?
Mr. Novick has a card for 1G, 1K, 1L, and 1P.
Okay, let's do them all.
Mr. President, you need a motion on 1D as in David.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. So you have 4 different, which is, you said,
I'm sure you're tired of hearing me, but I'll start with 1G. I think the point of what I'm saying here is that each of these items requires and needs some discussion and reflects on the nature of the policing that's carried out. So, for example, 1D is about the donation, excuse me, of $4,000 to benefit the domestic abuse response teams from the LA Police Foundation again. And I think that it's important to recognize that there's a substantial record around the country and in this department that police are actually more often involved in domestic violence, excuse me, than the general population. And that, in fact, a law was passed in California to relieve the police of the consequence that most other people face when they're involved in domestic violence, that they can no longer have a handgun. And that was lifted from police. So I think that when you're honoring the LA Police Department to deal with domestic abuse response, it's a chance to look at the question of the involvement of law enforcement in domestic abuse and in their failure to therefore adequately protect particularly women in the city from domestic abuse.
Okay.
So I'm rising to raise that question and to challenge you to think about the donations you accept and why you accept them, and the fact, again, that the LA Police Foundation has a conflict of interest because of Mr. Sobros' involvement with it. So I think that, you week after week are derelict in your duty as a police commission. You just rubber stamp these as you rubber stamp everything
Stay
else
on
that
topic,
comes before
please.
you. That's the topic. The topic is whether or not to approve this donation, and I think that you should oppose it, and I think you should discuss it, and I think you should think about what you're doing every time you accept money from these bloody hands. They bloody yours. I believe the next one I want to speak to is K, is that right?
Yes, but we do have a card for H, Mr.
No, let's finish with Mr.
Okay.
Novak.
1K, Mr. Novak.
Yeah, 1K is again a donation from the Los Angeles Police Foundation for $12,500. And this is to be used to purchase gifts and promotional items to promote goodwill within the department and the community. So you're talking about trying to bribe people with swag. If you're trying to improve the relations between the police and the community, there's a very simple way to do it. It's to reduce the violence, the racial profiling, the antagonism that the police create in this community through their operations. The problem is not police abuse. The problem is that the police are abusive of their power and abusive of their community as part of their responsibilities, as part of their charge, as part of what you delegate them to do. They're engaged in enforcing and upholding a white supremacist, exploitive, racist system that subjects people to indignities by the very way that they carry out their operations. They're designed, I've said before, the law in its majesty forbids the rich and poor alike from sleeping under bridges. So when you have so-called community policing and so-called constitutional policing, the police are still upholding and maintaining not order, not justice, not human needs, but they're violating the rights of people every day. So you're not going to improve the goodwill that the department gets from the community as long as the department continues to carry out that nature and that form of policing. And you're not going to buy people's goodwill with swag, with promotional items and gifts that will somehow blind them to those realities. So I think that you should reject this offer of a donation from the Police Foundation. I think that it demeans you and it demeans the people of this city to think that somehow you can buy their goodwill with gifts and promotional items. I don't know if it's LAPD keychains you're trying to give out or what.
Okay, Mr. Novak on 1L.
Yeah, 1L is another report. Again, this is money to benefit from the Los Angeles Police Foundation. They have very, very deep pockets. Obviously, they're giving thousands and thousands of dollars week after week, and you just accept it without question. This is to benefit the officers attending the North American Mounted Unit Commanders Association Conference. So I've spoken before about what the role that mounted police play in a city like Los Angeles. The main use that I've seen over and over again of mounted police in Los Angeles is that they're used for so-called crowd control. They're used to intimidate people out to protest. They're used occasionally as sort of this same idea of goodwill promotion. You send them out to schools to show officer friendly to kids with a horse, and you think that somehow that's going to buy acceptance of the LAPD. But the main use that the police mounted patrols have in this city and everywhere else around the country is to intimidate people from exercising their free speech and their First Amendment rights and their right to protest. And I think you should reject this money from the LA Police Foundation, another $2,000 added to the enormous amount of money they donate week after week, and you accept week after week without question. You're irresponsible. You're derelict in your duty as a police commissioner and the body charged with civilian oversight of this department, and instead you're on the dole. You're bagmen for the LAPD. You're accepting all these donations from the Police Foundation that are designed only to increase the level of violence and try to assuage people that somehow it's not happening, or that these officers are just here out of their goodwill and they ride horses and the horses are friendly and the police are friendly, when that's not the case, and you know it. So I think you should reject this money.
Is that the end of his?
He has
No.
a card for 1P.
Okay.
Oh, I thought I put one for 1M2, but I guess it's too small for the helicopter. 1P, let me see. Yeah, this one is specific. Department support relative to minor donation. This one is not from the LA Police Foundation, thankfully. It's from the Oscar Joel Bryant, which I think is a fine organization, from AFSCME, and I see the Police Memorial Foundation. The one I want to object to is Los Angeles Police Federal Credit Union. Outside in the hall here, you have a ATM machine from the Los Angeles Police Federal Credit Union. On it, it says Quick Draw. And I think this reflects the mentality of the LA Police Department, the LA Police Commission, and the LA Police Federal Credit Union. that they want to make a joke out of the idea that the LA police are quick on the draw, because it's not taking money out of the ATM fast, it's pulling their weapons. And so I think that, again, it's like you people are blind, deaf, and dumb to the realities that you're dealing with, and you refuse to examine the evidence week after week that even the most minor things reflect a culture of violence that is imbued throughout this department.
Okay, and sir, we have one card on 1K, Jonathan Foster.
Okay, on the ones that, is Mr. Foster speaking on the same,
On 1K,
and then we can go ahead and approve all.
Right.
Approve those. Okay, Mr. Foster.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Foster, and I was going to speak on 1K.
Okay,
My job is to protect the police department. That's my number one job, is to protect all of you. Who's protecting you? I am. Now that I've acknowledged the 98% excellent service, we have to talk about the 2% that eclipses the 98% of excellent service. The 2% that's wrong. You have a false sense of valor. You walk around on the sidewalks with false valor.
sir, will you stay on topic, please?
$12,000 is going to a promotional items. I added up all of this stuff. It's over $50,000. Where is the head-to-toe body armor for the police department so they don't get killed? You sent 3 officers out to Palmdale. 2 got shot. 1 got injured. They're gone. How do we replace them? How much money do you have? You're broke. This is a toilet. $50,000. Do you want head-to-toe body armor so you don't die? Because somebody can shoot you or you or you or you. I would love to get you head-to-toe body. You've been here for 30 years, and the other waste case that just left been here for over 30 years, and you don't have head-to-toe body armor for any of you people? You're just going around in a vest. You have a false sense of valor. My job is to protect you.
Yeah.
If this
Okay, off topic.
$50,000
Thank you,
should
sir.
have been spent on head-to-toe body armor, you're a loser.
Okay, thanks. Okay, let's have a motion for approval for items numbers
G, K, L, G, H, K, L, and P.
Do we have all in favor? Okay. Next item is number K, did you say? That has a comment? Oh, H has it? What has a comment?
I'm sorry. We do have a card, Mr. Herman, for 1H and 1L.
Okay.
So,
Herman?
In such a report, as described in definition 12131, dealing with department's conflict for mediation course, which falls under a budget, that qualified individuals, specifically, let me just address the public, the term for 12134 definition stands for the term public entity, means any state or local government, department, agency, instrumentality that deals with benefit of risk management, such as a TMU or a TRO. Get it? Temporary restraining order? Unheard of, 5 years. But let me go into the meat of this item H. We're talking about monetary donations. Could it have a variance to a donation? Simply not, because this discussion of the Los Angeles Police Foundation was already used and found a fact that travel costs for one sergeant roughly cost the public $2,500. Why can't he use the internet and sky himself across the country? Are we that backlogged in technology, or are we just fucking stupid? Because $2,500 can go right back to protecting horses that are injured in this department. And again, definition 12131, the term public entity means local government. And so far, Steve Soboroff is a racist, prejudiced motherfucker.
So you want to go to your next one? Oh, you're done. Okay, thanks.
My next one, sir.
No, that was it.
Hit it up.
1L.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Let's have a motion for approval of. Of H. Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, this is,
L, sir. We're on L. L, correct? Are we ready?
go ahead.
Commissioner Figueroa Villa, seconded.
Thank you, Ms. Villaraigosa. The department's report dated June 1st, 2018, relative to the monetary donation and reimbursement personnel attending the North American Mounted Units Commanders. Well, I'm North American Indian. Can you tell how fucked up I speak? Because of all the dugs and drugs in the conference at the Metropolitan Division where the niggers stand at the fucking meters
topic.
tapping me out saying you gotta pay. So when you use reimbursed personnel money of $2,058 and fucking 80 cents, Mr. Soboroff, you racist motherfucker.
Off topic, you're finished, thanks.
I'm
Okay, we have a motion for approval for that item.
1L.
We have a second? All in favor? Aye, okay. Let's go to item number 2A.
Okay, item number 2A, Department's presentation and discussion relative to the 2017 Use of Force Year-End Review Report.
Morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Captain John McMahon, Use of Force Review Division. Along with me are other members from Use of Force Review Division. I'll let them introduce themselves, starting to my left.
Officer Quintanilla.
Yeah, right into the mic.
Officer Quintanilla.
Test. Yeah.
Good morning, Officer Back.
Morning.
Good morning, Officer Gonzalez.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before I start,
In the mic.
is that better? My apologies. Give me a second here.
Take your time.
Okay. I start off with Commissioner Johnson. Well over 3 years ago, you asked the department for a report on use of force. Chief Beck promised you the most comprehensive one ever. I just started my assignment here at Use of Force Review Division, and together with these officers around me, I'm proud to say that we've kept that promise and have delivered to you law enforcement's most comprehensive report on police use of force. This report, now in its third edition, is a report that I'm confident will represent to this commission the finest law enforcement report on use of force nationwide. I will start off this presentation, as I have in the past, reminding the public that despite widespread notoriety on police use of force, it remains a rather rare occurrence. Last year, LAPD officers engaged in well over 1.5 million contacts with the public. Over 718,000 contacts initiated by officers conducting law enforcement stops. Of those 700,000 law enforcement-related contacts, almost 97,000 resulted in some form of an arrest. With that in perspective, 2,195, or 0.13%, resulted in the use of force of the documented 1.5 million contacts. When it comes to officer-involved shootings, there were 44 incidents, less than 0.03 of 1%. Represented on this graph here is a long traveled road through 2017. If you were to look at this graph and represent the officer-involved shootings, it would be represented by that little red dot right there. Represents the number of officer-involved shootings in comparison to the 1.6 million contacts. With Respect to tactical de-escalation, a big topic over the past 2 years. Its emphasis in its current form is still fairly new. On April 18th, 2017, Special Order Number 5 was signed and approved by this commission. This order brought tactical de-escalation into the department's use of force policy. At LAPD, we've taken tactical de-escalation to a new level. Here, de-escalation, when safe and feasible to do so, begins before the officers make contact with the suspect. It begins the moment the officer receives a radio call or before they decide to make a stop on their own initiative. This tactical de-escalation photo, pictured here, has been turned into a poster and is now prominently hung on the wall of each patrol division in the city and is used as a visual aid for training. This past year, our training efforts have focused on 3 key areas. Number 1, de-escalation, 2, building trust and reverence for human life, and 3, educating officers on the resources and systems available to those impacted by mental illness. It's worth noting that officers are now equipped with a resource guide and a 9/11 checklist to ensure persons affected by mental illness are directed to adequate resources. 96% of personnel have completed the use of force update class. This class consists of reality-based live scenarios, emphasis on constitutional policing, and de-escalation skills. Between March and October 2017, a vast majority of sworn personnel attended the implicit bias course facilitated by Dr. Brian Marks, a national expert on implicit bias and a professor of psychology at Morehouse College. This class has been met with renowned reviews and very positive feedback by just about everybody that's attended that course. Regarding mental illness, MEU responded to approximately 8,500 calls for service in 2017. To date, nearly 2,000 officers have gone through the 40-hour mental health intervention training update. There are also HOPE teams in each of the 4 geographic bureaus as well as Transit Bureau. All officers assigned to HOPE and RESET teams have completed the 40-hour mental health intervention training. MEU also continues to roll out SMART teams to assist field personnel with mental illness-related radio calls. Regarding categorical use of force, we had a total of 78 categorical use of force incidents in 2017. Here's a breakdown of those incidents. We had 5 in custody deaths. This is up 3 from last year, and it should be noted that this number is often adjusted at the end of each year. In accordance with department policy, cases can be reclassified based on specific criteria. For example, when it's determined that an in-custody death does not involve the use of force by department personnel and the death is ultimately determined to be a natural. Other incidents include 2 carotid restraint control holds, 4 law enforcement-related injury incidents, 1 head strike incident, 4 canine contacts requiring hospitalization, 1 warning shot incident, and 7 unintentional discharges, along with 10 animal shooting incidents. Officer-involved shootings. Our 44 officer-involved shootings involved 46 suspects. 30 of these incidents were hits, and 14 were non-hits. This was a 10% increase in overall officer-involved shootings compared to 2016. Here's a break. Yes, it'll all be listed in the report, and no, I'll get into that a little bit too. Here's the breakdown of the ethnicities and genders of the 46 suspects and the 110 officers that were involved. This graphic here, orange represents the suspects and blue represents the officers. 57% were Hispanic, 22% were white, and 20% were black. Also, 2 of the 46 suspects were females. Now, let me get this. It's not quite there. Unknown. Always raised a lot of questions. What is unknown? In this case here, it was one particular case. The unknown suspect was a robbery suspect who fired upon a victim, but the suspect got away, and we have no description for that particular suspect. Unfortunately, the department has again led the nation in officer-involved shootings. We're happy to report that in 2017, we experienced an 11% drop in OIS fatalities compared to 2016. I'll get into further details in this in a bit. Before I do, I'd like to turn it over to Officer Bach to provide some information as to how the numbers compare with per capita rates.
Commissioners, although we had the most officer-involved shooting incidents among the major departments in the nation, we were fairly even when viewed on a per capita basis. The department had 0.011 OIS incidents per 1,000 residents here in the city, which was essentially equal to Chicago's 0.012. The three remaining cities that we consistently reference throughout the report of Houston, New York City, and Philadelphia had 0.007, 0.003, and 0.008 OAS incidents per 1,000 residents, respectively. Officer Gonzalez will now discuss Metropolitan Division and its relationship to this issue.
Good morning, Commissioners. I would like to briefly highlight the efforts of Metropolitan Division, in addition to some facts regarding their involvement in OIS incidents in 2017. Their significant contributions to crime reduction are extremely noteworthy, as highlighted in the number of public contacts during pedestrian and vehicle stops seen here in this graphic. It's important to note that approximately 13% of the department's nearly 719,000 total vehicle and pedestrian stops were conducted by Metropolitan Division's approximately 470 personnel alone. Their productivity has increased over the last 3 years, which largely in part is due to the division's personnel expansion that commenced beginning in July 2015. 836 firearms were recovered by Metropolitan Division officers throughout 2017. In context, department personnel recovered approximately 6,500 firearms. As such, Metropolitan Division officers alone had approximately 13% of the department's total firearm recoveries. 9 of the department's 44 OIS incidents, or 20%, involved Metropolitan Division. And this isn't surprising given the proactive nature of their work, the violent crime areas they were assigned, and the volatile incidents they respond to on a daily basis. However, this only translates to about 0.0098 of 1% of their total field detentions throughout the year. 100% of those 9 incidents involved a suspect armed with a firearm. Additionally, 44% of those 9 incidents involved a suspect who had fired at officers and or a third party at some point during the encounter. Captain?
The 17 fatalities, as indicated earlier, is an 11% decrease from last year. Currently, we are exploring the implementation of immediate life-saving measures in the hopes of reducing this number even further. Here is the ethnic breakdown of the fatalities. 10 were Hispanics, 6 were whites, and 1 was black. Completed autopsy reports have revealed that alcohol was present in 42% of the decedents. Methamphetamines was also present in an additional 42% of the decedents, as indicated on the autopsy reports that have been completed so far up to date. This graph here depicts 2017 violent crime suspect ethnicities compared to their respective city population levels. It should be noted that this information came from victim and witness descriptions and not from department personnel. Black represents 44% of reported violent crime and 9% of the population. Hispanics represent 40% of reported violent crime and 49% of the population. Whites represent 8% of reported violent crime and 28% of the population. And other ethnicities represent 3% of violent crime and 14% of the population. And unknown suspects we don't have a description for, accounted for 5% of reported violent crime. Officer Quintanilla, to my left, will now review with you the types of threats the officers have faced over the years.
Throughout the 7-year period from 2011 through 2017, firearms consistently accounted for the highest volume of suspect weapons in OIS incidents, with a 7-year average of 56%. In 2017, firearms accounted for 52% of suspect weapons. Replica or pellet guns had a 7-year average of 7% and a 2017 total of 9%. Edged weapons consistently accounted for the second highest volume of suspect weapons, with a 7-year average of 18% and a 2017 total of 20%. Perception-based shootings accounted for a 7-year average of 7% and remained consistent in 2017. Impact devices accounted for 4% during the 7-year period and 9% in 2017. Weapons with an other designation accounted for 7% during the 7-year period and 4% in 2017. And lastly, occurrences involving no weapons or unarmed suspect accounted for 1% of incidents during the 7-year period. There was no such incident in 2017. Captain.
In 2017, 72% of suspects were armed with either a firearm or an edged weapon. In 23% of these incidents, the suspect had or was shooting at officers or others. 13 of the 46 suspects, or 28%, involved in officer-involved shootings were perceived to suffer from mental illness. This accounted for 18 percentage point increase compared to 10% of suspects in 2016. 3 of the 46 suspects, or approximately 7%, involved were homeless. This accounts for a 2 percentage point increase compared to the 5% increase in 2016. From 2016 to 2017, homeless suspects accounted for 5 of the 87 suspects, or 87.6%. Now let's move on to non-categorical use of force. We've seen a 10% increase of these incidents. Some of the things I attribute these increases to are attacks on officers, that they're increasing, the fact that we now have a transit services division, and also body-worn and better training has accounted for better reporting of use of force incidents. We've had significant increases in the use of longer range, less lethal impact devices. Anecdotally, I believe these increases are reflective of our emphasis on tactical de-escalation, including our edged weapons protocols and equipping officers with multi-port mounts to better equip them to have less lethal weapons at the ready. It's very difficult to establish how many officer-involved shootings, if any, were prevented. I'm currently working with Chief Villegas and Mr. Alicon in seeking grant funding to solicit help from academia to get a better understanding regarding these increases and the impact edge weapons protocols are having on the possibility of reducing officer-involved shootings. The department is currently refining its policies to be consistent with recent court decisions that have put less lethal options in what is described as an intermediate force level. That is, those circumstances where a suspect is violent, poses a serious threat to the officers. As these numbers show increases, we expect that perhaps they will continue to grow. Given these court decisions, officers are expected to go hands-on in cases where a suspect is non-compliant or is resistant and does not pose a serious threat to the officers and is not acting violent during the encounter. In other words, in those cases, the officers are pretty much obligated to go hands-on and not use the less lethal impact tools. There were no changes with respect to the tasers as we compared the last 2 years. You can see we had one less in 2017 than we did in 2016. There was, however, a slight decrease in taser effectiveness compared to 2016. I will now turn it over to Officer Bach, who will give you some data regarding a point that I made earlier regarding the increases on the attacks on officers.
So a very troubling trend that continued in 2017 was the increase in attacks on LAPD officers. 741 attacks in 2017 was a 13% increase compared to 2016, and an even greater increase of 26% when compared to 2012 through 2016 average. 61 suspects were armed with a knife during non-categorical use of force incidents, which is a 20% increase compared to 2016. And further, 31 suspects were armed with an impact device during non-categorical incidents, which is a 121% increase compared to 2016. And there were...
Sorry, can you go back 2 slides?
Yes.
So these were 61 suspects that were armed with a knife that there was some use of force?
Correct, those are during non-categorical use of force, yes.
That did not result in an officer-involved shooting.
Hit your mic.
Do we track the number of suspects that are arrested that are armed with a knife overall, even when there's no use of force used?
No, that is one of the things. There's a number of things I'm looking out to academia to help us out with, and that kind of hints on some of the point that I made earlier. So we've implemented tactical de-escalation. We've implemented this edged weapons protocol, but it's very difficult without going into and review a hands-on review of these 21+100 non-cats to see, hey, what exactly took place in this incident, and what was the likelihood it resulted in a prevented an officer-involved shooting. One of the things anecdotally you would look at is say, if it was a radio call, it involved the suspect being armed with a weapon, perhaps it involved the use of non-categorical use of force, and a weapon was recovered and an arrest was made, I'd really like to take a look at each one of those cases to give a perspective on what's going on there. But unfortunately, we don't have the resources. It's a very labor-intensive review, and I'm looking for some grant funding, and I think we're going to get it to give us an idea of what that kind of looks like.
Excuse me, I just have just a quick question. With respect to the definition of attacks on officers, so could you tell me if that means that the suspect had literally turned their focus to that officer and was involved in an actual active attack on the officer, or was the suspect armed with, knife, bat, etc., and acting in a threatening manner? I know it's a small distinction, but I'm just interested in what that means.
Yeah, for the attacks on officers, that includes criminal charges for battery and aggravated assault. So that's an aggressive act towards officers of violence.
In order for it to be classified or checked off as an attack on an officer, it would have to equate to a crime, and the officer's listed as a victim in the actual crime report. So in some form or fashion, it would equate to a crime of some sort, battery or ADW, whatever the case may be.
On the officer.
On the officer. Okay, there you go.
Okay, and there were 14 suspects that were armed with firearms during non-categorical use of force incidents, which is a 55% increase from last year. And like we noted with the edged weapons, these obviously did not result in an officer-involved shooting. And as Officer Gonzalez mentioned earlier, the department recovered 6,500 firearms in 2017, which was an increase of 11% compared to 2016, and a 19% increase compared to 2012 through 2016 annual average.
And that does not include gun buybacks.
That's correct, sir. Yes.
Police tactics and use of force videos are ubiquitous in today's society. In the coming weeks, the department will publicly release its first 2 department body-worn video categorical use of force incidents. We realize that the public's view on an officer's actions and behavior prior to the use of force can at times have a greater impact than the use of force itself. The department has and will continue its focus on providing our officers with the training and resources to resolve these issues as much as possible without force. But police work, as we all know, at times is violent, can be ugly, and is dangerous. Our commitment is to develop thoughtful strategies that will include equipping our officers with the tools and resources necessary to improve tactics when confronting violent armed suspects. This will continue to be a priority. We are committed to reducing these numbers. Yes, our ultimate goal when it comes to officer-involved shootings is a number that equates to 0. Continue our efforts to build better communities and further identify best practices as part of our core value of quality through continuous improvement. Commissioners, I will close with that remark, but before I do, let me point out to the entire public that this report, 400 plus pages that gets into far greater detail, is available to the public as of now, and it can be found on lapdonline.org.
Thank you. Do we have any commissioner questions, comments?
I just want to remind everyone that we've now just gotten this very comprehensive report, including the public, and we'll put this back on the agenda in 2 weeks for follow-up questions. I did have an opportunity as a member of the Use of Force Subcommittee to preview it, and once again, it's remarkable in its comprehensiveness. Frankly, it's far beyond what I expected when I initially made the request. I guess it was 3 years ago now. So once again, thank you for your fantastic work on this, and I have given these over the years to different people involved in law enforcement oversight, and unfortunately no one seems to be following our example with doing any reports that are anything close to being as comprehensive as this. I talked to a number of people who were involved with the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, and including sharing this with President Obama himself. And they were really amazed with the lengths and extent that we had gone through to put this information together. So it's a real credit to the department and to the fine work that you guys have done on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. By many respects, this is equally your report. This came out of your direction, and it's something you wanted 3 years ago. So I think you share in the success we've enjoyed with this report as well. Thank you.
Great.
I'd like to say, following up on the last remark, credit where credit is due. It is, regardless of how the information, the data provided in the report is received, and I'm certain that there will be a range of perspectives regarding what it actually reflects and says about this department. This is an extraordinary level of transparency and represents a real significant step forward. You can't begin to applaud, critique, or otherwise evaluate what any organization is doing without a strong baseline of information. And I want to join in both applauding the department for the job it's done and also for recognizing Commissioner Johnson's leadership in moving this forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, we do have 11 cards, sir.
Okay, hold on for a second. I want to acknowledge what was said, but again, I haven't read it carefully. None of us have yet. But what I want to say, I want to remark on your presentation. It was to the point. It was well rehearsed. It was, yeah, I think you do homework when you're going to make a presentation to the Board of Police Commissioners, and that's appreciated. Okay.
Okay, we'll start with the first 3 public comment cards. We have Mr. Novick, Mr. Herman, and Gina Viola.
Is that on? Yeah. So I think that, the first thing you need to do is reconsider what they term a use of force. I walk into this room, and I'm surrounded by people with billy clubs and pistols. When I walked into the building, I'm forced to remove my belt. So that's a use of force. I don't understand. If you said they had 1,600,000 police contacts, and every time the police contact you, they're standing there with fully armed with tear gas, with tasers, with batons. You talked about passing the baton to a new chief. People understand that the baton is a weapon. So I think that's the first point. The second one, a lot of stuff went by very fast, and I will look at it online, but they showed you the comparison to other departments. New York Police Department, which is 3 times the size and in a city twice the size, had 23 shootings last year, and the LAPD had 44. So you have to question, why is a department 1/3 the size, policing a city half the size, have twice as many shootings as New York City? The final point I would say is that they showed you a lot of numbers very quickly, but if they had 716,000, something like that, police-initiated contacts and stops, and out of those they found 14 people that were armed in use of force, why don't they show you what percentage that is? They showed you very carefully that the number of people killed by the police was like an infinitesimal fraction of the number of people they stopped. But, they're trying to create a mentality that they're under siege. And it's not the police who are under siege in the city. It's the population of the city that's under siege. The black and brown and poor people of the city are under siege by this department, and it's your responsibility to put a stop to that.
Mr. Herman?
Well, it's very simple to understand that when individuals are confronted by authority, especially the qualified individuals, in your report you talked about mental health and the homeless. And in discovery of the term a qualified individual with a disability, I'm referring to an individual disability which characterized by reasonable modifications, rules and policies and practices that under the law 14141 you discriminate against the rights of those individuals. For the same way the incident with Ezell Ford, the same incident with Mr. Africa, the same incident, and I won't bring up the name, But I will say, that's a very extensive TRO, 5 years. However, because of such rules, policies, and practice that you as the law enforcement don't practice, it's a pattern and practice, violating the civil rights of those here today advocating on behalf of the public's interest. So when someone says to me, hey, white nigger, why are you up there working? That's because I'm working. And unfortunately, 42 U.S.C. 1983 and Mr. Sobroff, jackass developer, doesn't allow me that right to speak and be polite. Now, if he would stop interrupting the public, I can be polite. But unfortunately, he doesn't listen. He doesn't follow rules because it's all a rehearsal. It's just a big show of rehearsal. And if I had a monopoly of $1 billion, I wouldn't be a fucking commissioner. I wouldn't fucking be here, and I'd get the fuck out of my job.
Next speaker.
Gina Viola, followed by General Jeff.
Morning. Use of force. We've been denied seating today. The use of force starts right here in this room very frequently. Even the graphic that was on the wall the whole morning to me looked like it came from a video game or from a movie, which I'm not understanding when we're getting hard facts. The way you treat the public, the families in the community directly impacted by police use of force in this commission is at best patronizing and more often shameful. You are very good at approving donations. This commission is very good at doing that. Why don't you just become a board that does that? Because you are not an oversight board. When I hear you give accolades for a report that looks to me to have tons of inconsistencies, I was quickly trying to do the math on many of the slides, and they didn't even add up. The graphics did not add up to 100% on several of those slides. So it'll be interesting to look at this more carefully and try and decipher what's actually in this report. But to hear you commend it over and over again is troubling to me. The fact that it took 3 years for a report like this to be made. If we're just reporting facts, why should it take that long? And I have that same comment about body-worn cameras. Why are only 2 body-worn cameras going to be released when there have been 40? Well, one slide said 44.
Stay on topic, please.
I'm talking about police use of force. I'm speaking directly to the report, which I feel like you've been doing all morning, so clearly you have no desire to hear a word we have to say. So I'm done.
Thank you.
Just to respond to your a couple of your points. So first of all, this is the 3rd report. So we've done one of these reports each year. So yes, this is year 3. It didn't take 3 years to do a report. There was one done for each of 2015, 2016, and this is now 2017. As we mentioned earlier, this will be back on the agenda in 2 weeks. So if there's issues that you have in the report, that's exactly why we're bringing it back on the agenda, and you're welcome to have your time back at the microphone to express those concerns, and if there's something specific, we'll try and answer it. And in terms of the release of video, which did come up in the report, so I think it's okay for me to talk about, when we passed our video release policy, it was specifically not looking backward because that would just frankly use too much resources. So it was a going forward policy, and every officer involved shooting, I believe, after April 19th, those videos will be released, and those first videos will be coming up soon.
Okay, Jeff?
General Jeff, followed by Adam Smith and Melina Abdullah.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is General Jeff from Skid Row. This report is 100% complete hogwash. I don't understand how you being a citizens commission that represent we the people, how you just immediately and instantly take whatever the hell they're saying at face value. This is nothing but LAPD just showcasing themselves and shining up showcasing themselves and presenting themselves in a positive light. How can you offset these numbers? Like if there's accounting, you have number different columns that offset, but they're just putting forth whatever the hell they want to put forth. That doesn't make it true. So you represent we the people. Where is your due diligence to hold them accountable and stop just blindly accepting whatever numbers they put forth? We the public can clearly see off this super fast presentation that there's a whole bunch of discrepancies in the work. So yeah, we're going to be back in two weeks. Another thing is how much taxpayer money was spent on this fancy high gloss presentation with the superimposed graphics, and I mean, was that outsourced to a third party, or is that somebody in the department that's doing this? I mean, there's a lot of specific questions that could be asked. They could have done this with just some pencil and paper and just let's save some money. I mean, it seems like it's a whole lot of taxpayer waste. When they're talking about 1.6 encounters, so over 700,000 were initiated by LAPD. So I mean, they're fluffing up their own numbers, knowing that they're going to come up with this report. And so, in order to dilute the numbers and significantly reduce the numbers, they could just increase and engage in encounters that aren't even valid. For instance, I was giving a tour to some college students and professors in Skid Row, and Officer Chang in Central Division came up and called me anti-cop, and we got it on tape. And so there's a whole bunch of things that he said specifically about me, assassinating my character. So a lot of this is rubbish. Thank you.
Adam Smith.
Good morning. I'm not well rehearsed today, Mr. Soboroff, so I apologize for that. Just a few comments about the report. Obviously, as was mentioned, we all know that the LAPD year after year kills the most people. Michael Novick brought up the comparison to, NYPD and the New York population. What was striking to me, one of the many things that was striking, was the slide about the use of so-called non-lethal weapons, which we all know can be, and how many people die by taser every year, etc. But what those numbers said to me, and I hope that you guys think about it as well, is that, yes, they used more non-lethal than the year before, but what I see is like them having more weapons, they're using more weapons, regardless of whether they're non-lethal or not. They talked about the 40 hours of mental health intervention training that the Hope and the Reset teams get. And it brings me back to the Safer Cities initiative and having these cops be mental health workers when ending up killing Charlie Africa. Like, we don't need our money going to funding cops to be mental health professionals. And the last thing that stuck out to me was the kind of normalization of what an attack on a cop is. And immediately I thought of Dr. Abdullah's arrest for battery. And was that legal?
Next speaker, please.
Melina Abdullah, followed by Wayne and Eddie H.
So there's a lot to unpack with this report, and I'm going to request that we have hard copies available for people next week. Some people still don't have access to the internet, and so we need to make sure that everybody has access to the report so they can comment on it knowledgeably. I want to lift up what just happened with this whole PR stump, because that's all this report is. It's a PR tool. It's a tool of propaganda to pretend like what's happening in our city is not important, and that police, when they attack and kill our people, that they're justified in doing so. So I want to lift up this process of criminalizing people and justifying the attacks on them because they are criminalized. So I rarely use myself as an example, but my arrest on May 8th, I was charged with battery on an officer. According to their justifications, that would have been okay for them to use force on me for what they, the only thing I was accused of is touching someone, which someone says I didn't even touch them, someone else touched them, right? And so that would have been used to justify my killing or non-categorical use of force against me. I also want to lift up this use of the term edged weapons and impact weapons. As police commissioners, I hope that you will be critiquing that, because it is not illegal to possess a knife. It is not illegal to possess a baseball bat. It is not illegal to possess a stick or a rock or a book, right? Those things are things that we have a right to as people. And then finally, praising yourselves for dropping down to 17 killings is horrible. Just ask Valerie Rivera, whose son was one of those 17 people that you murdered.
Wayne Spindler.
Yes, very good.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yes, so you want to know who prepared the slide presentation? It was me, the pig. So yes, thank you so much. Dealing with the issue of the knives, attacking officers with a knife. How many knives have been attacked by officers who have actually lived to tell the story? No one. So what you usually do, and this is good for all you young cadets out there listening, there's two things you need in your car. One, you need to be able to plant a knife or a gun at the scene to justify the assault. Yes. Please turn to page 399 of the report. It contains that information. Also on page 385, it talks about rule number 1, when you see a cop, put your fucking hands up. Yes. And when you're pulled over, put your hands on the steering wheel. Now, when they tell you to, can I see your ID? Well, let's demonstrate.
Put your hands on the wheel. Let me see your registration. Oops, boom, boom.
Yes, because the trick is you took your hand off the steering wheel, stupid. Jesus Christ. Let's try it again.
Put your hands on the steering wheel.
Yes, sir.
Let me see your registration. Sir, let me see your registration. Now, I'm going to shoot you.
Sir, you forgot to tell me to take the hand off the steering wheel.
There you go, and you passed.
Thank you.
See, so remember, that's a good tactic for all you future cops. Always tell the guy to put his hands on the steering wheel, then ask for his registration, and when he reaches in the glove box, then you can shoot him because he was reaching for a weapon. Thank you. See, I do good work.
Eddie H., followed by Valerie Rivera.
Eddie H. And as Dr. Molina said, there is a lot to unpack and unfurl here. The first thing I would say is, like my colleague General Jeff said, this is a bogus report. And every time I've come to this commission and the police department has given a report, it's been bogus. But it's been co-signed. It's been literally given thumbs up by this commission. And I would just personalize something for a lot of people in this room. The last time I was in this room, there was literally use of force that was going to be used against me. I didn't have a weapon. I didn't threaten any officer, right? I didn't resist arrest. And that old tired trope that you guys use all the time, that you feared for your life, right? You thought I was a threat, was irrelevant because I came through a metal detector. My only crime is that I was sitting while black. And the response that was garnered in this room was unthinkable. You're talking about 10 police officers came to remove me from out of here for just speaking up. Okay? So when we talk about de-escalation and we talk about use of force in real time, and the people on the cameras, they saw that. So just imagine what happens in the street, right? If I was in the street, I might not be here today, you know, for just existing while black. So let's get that straight. Secondly, you talk about 78 incidences. Have you counted the incidences that happened in this room where police use of force, you know, basically to get people out of this meeting, people who are speaking up? So when we talk about the LAPD and their use of force, let's be serious about that, right? When you talk about 577 tasers being deployed and the next is 578, that's cooking the books, you know? So it's one difference from 1 year to the next.
Next speaker.
Valerie Rivera, followed by Catherine Walker.
Good morning, everyone. So tomorrow, June 6th, marks 1 year that my son Eric Rivera was stolen from us. And I just want to clear something up. First of all, my son was not a suspect; he was a victim. That's right. And he was murdered that night, and he shouldn't have died that night. And those officers should not have went back to work that very next day. The only thing that those officers had to fear for that day was themselves. They should have had to fear for themselves, because their, excuse my language, but their fuck-ups is what caused the death of my son, not my son. And as far as I know, it's not illegal to have a squirt gun, a water gun. They sell that shit everywhere. I'm traumatized. I have PTSD now. I've never had PTSD my whole entire life, and I have it now. Because every time I go into Walmart, a little liquor store down at the corner, even the 99-cent store, it being summertime now, there's squirt guns being sold everywhere. It's just shameful. This is just so shameful, man. I mean, for them to make it look like my son did something wrong when that officer jumped out, failed to put his car in park in a hastily manner, and that's the word Charlie Beck used. Tripped, fell, hit himself in the elbow on the ground, crying out in excruciating pain, thinking he was shot, when really he wasn't. He fucked himself up. His partner begins to shoot at my son, and then realizes his car is still in drive, tells his partner to jump on the brake, and instead of stepping on the brake, he steps on the gas, launching that car more towards my son, pinning him under that vehicle.
Would you like to use your public comment now, your 2 minutes for that, or do you want to come back?
I'll keep going.
Okay, so we'll use your 2 minutes for public comment now?
Thank you.
Okay, so let's set the clock for the 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And I just don't see how they can just go back to work the next day. If he was in so much pain, how can he go back to work the next day? They were so negligent. They failed to do their job that day. My son didn't have a chance to speak with them or even show them it was a squirt gun. It's just heartbreaking, and and the worst part of this whole situation is the disrespect that I get. The total disregard of my son's life. He was only 20 years old. He deserved to live a life. He deserved to become a father. He deserved to find the love of his life. He deserved to be a good man. And it was taken from him. And it was taken from me. I hope to God those officers go to work every day with their head held low, because they don't deserve to be working and having their head held high. They need to get their badges and their guns taken away. And I don't know what to do to get that to happen, but I'm going to fight my hardest to get that to happen. And unfortunately, I know it's not going to come from you all. So I'm still just going to keep coming in and keep talking about my baby. So you guys are just going to have to deal with it.
Thank you. Say his name. Eric Rivera. Say his name. Eric Rivera. Say his name.
Next speaker.
The next speaker, please.
Say his name.
Next speaker.
Say his name.
The next speaker, please, Catherine Walker, followed by Jamie Garcia and Jonathan Foster.
Hello, my name is Catherine Walker, and I'm the mother of Grishario Mack. I read up on your wall where it says integrity. Do you guys know the meaning of integrity? And the meaning of integrity? Read your Bible. Do you read the word? Because integrity means an honest man, a kind person, a loving person. God didn't make that word for you to turn around and make it something bad. It's in the Bible. You took the officers that took my son's lives. I forgive y'all, because you know why? You got to answer to the man up above. Every morning I wake up crying, saying, God, heal my heart. Heal my pain. But I'm not worried about it, because I'm a God-fearing mother, that I know that even though you don't answer down here, you're going to answer to God up there. And as far as talking about a use of force, my baby was killed because he's a black man. He did no harm to no one. He didn't cut nobody. He didn't stab nobody. But they feared him because he's a black man. But he was a strong man, okay? Just as God has put blood in my son, he put blood in all of you. Where's your hearts at? Where's the love at you have for all people, no matter what race we are? Where's the love? Learn the word of integrity. Read it when you go home, because there's no integrity in all of you. There's no integrity in you. And what makes it so bad and so shameful is that I had family members that was police officers. Okay? Learn this word. And that's all I got to say. Learn the word of integrity. Learn God's words. Live with his words. I just hope that in my case, that we all will find justice in everybody's case, not in mine, in everybody's case. And there will be peace among the people.
Thank you.
Jamie Garcia.
Next speaker.
Jamie Garcia. And please let the record reflect Commissioner Shane Goldsmith is here and present.
So we have a legacy of force within the LAPD, a long legacy of it, as being we had Operation Hammer, Weed and Seed, and all these things direct us towards use of force. And we always seem to focus on this end. It's as if we focus on when we're killed, when we're maimed, when we're beaten, when we're arrested, when we're incarcerated, as if that's somehow going to change how we feel about you, how we feel about policing, that somehow if you're transparent about that, that somehow is going to change how we feel, how we experience this violence. But what the coalition wants to talk about is before the bullet hits the body. What is going on? What are the conditions you're creating in our communities that lead to this violence, that lead to this force, that lead to these shootings, that lead to these so-called attacks? When you're a hot spot, when you're in a laser zone, when you're a chronic offender, what does it mean when an officer approaches you? What does it mean on how he perceives you? What is he going to do when he engages with you? And that's what we want to know, because we want to know what those conditions on the ground are creating. So, you know, we get to this point and we're tired. We're tired of being killed. We're tired of being shot at. We're tired of being arrested. We're tired of being caged. So we want to know what happens before. Because you speak about these 1.6 million contacts, but we're in the age of predictive analytics. We're in the age of data-driven evidence-based policing. So all those points matter. We know that chronic offenders, you guys base that on arrests and FI cards. We still don't have the race data on arrests. You guys stopped reporting it, and it was asked specifically in this meetings, where is that race data? Where is the race data for stops, pedestrian citation stops? So where is it? Because if your data-driven evidence-based policing is going to be based on this, we need to know. And we especially need to know about FI cards. All of these 1.6 million stops, what was the race data on that? So if we're going to talk...
Next speaker, please.
The final speaker, Jonathan Foster.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Foster. The reason why I come up and speak about this is because I come out of a family. I didn't serve in the military, but I come out of a family that has 60 straight years of service to the United States military, and I've been all over the place. And I acknowledge the 98% excellent service of the LAPD. Now, speaking about the 2% that's wrong, I want to say, though, thank you. Most people do not and may not like what I have to say, but I do have issues like any human with the police department. The LAPD can't have a day when it's not at its best. There's somebody up here not at their best. The more personal resources the officer has shown to be a good thing. But the police put the police out of business. I want to put you out of business. So I'm saying, do what Jesus said. I'm saying this to LA. Do what Jesus said. People, good people, you people, good people seem to be trying to do something good, but it's like the upright piano. You're trying to put it through the door this way, but nobody is saying, let's turn the piano this way so we can get it through the door. I have tried to do everything right because I never want to talk to you or interact with you. So I try to do everything right. But I have dealt with the police. They double talk. They cast false narrative into the interaction, and they anger bait people, okay? This is happening because police don't have head-to-toe body armor because there's too much partying to do. 5 to 8 officers at a time need new automobiles to do this. 1 or 2 officers creates the issue because they have to pull out the gun to take care of the issue, and this is wrong. We're missing like $45 trillion that could have helped all of this, and you could be at home right now. Do what Jesus said.
We have no other cards on this item, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Who is it?
Pastor Q.
Oh, come on up. We didn't see the card.
Good morning. I hope you guys feel the pain of black and brown communities this morning. I know you guys are not listening to us, because if you were, you wouldn't have the same department we do not trust do a report on use of force. It would be an independent entity. Therefore, we can't trust the report. Speaking of before the bullet hits the body, this is a design issue, by the way. Someone up here talked about transparency. We don't know if it's true transparency. If the community or independent entity did this report, what would the outcome be? Wonder, has anybody asked themselves that question? As it relates to use of force, last week I was asked to leave the meeting because 10 officers came up to him while he was sitting down, and they didn't like what he had to say, or he was speaking out of turn. 10 killer bees. This ain't the Wu-Tang Clan. If the cameras were not here, like Eddie H. said, what would have happened? This is a microcosm of what happens in our communities all the time. What you guys missed, what made me stand up, was the face of the officer when he stood over him, attempting to intimidate him. We're not here we're not here with weapons unless our skins is our sin. If you want to build trust,
Thank you, sir. Okay, thanks, guys. Let's go to item 2B, please.
Item 2B, Department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the current information available on the City and Department Open Data website link.
Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brian Ganley, Chief Information Officer. I'm here to discuss briefly the open data that we publish on both the department website and the city's data portal. I want to just describe briefly when we started, what we publish, and most importantly, how to get to that. So starting there with how to get to that data. Two places, again, lapdonline.org. If you go to that site, there's a link called Transparency. All of the data is there. Points essentially to data.lacity.org, which is the mayor's open data portal for information from the police department, fire department, and various other city departments. If you go to data.lacity.org, and unfortunately not too many people do, and I'll discuss the viewership in just a moment, but if you do go to that site, you scroll down a little bit, there's a large button, Public Safety. And if you click on that button, you can see several different data sets of literally millions and millions of records dating back to approximately 2010. So I want to discuss some of those data sets that we make available in all of those ways that I just mentioned. The most popular by viewership and downloads is crime data. It's a complete data set from 2010 to the present. It's updated weekly. It was updated this morning. Tuesdays are when most of these data sets are updated each week. So this is current as of today. It has 19,000 views over the course of that time that it's been posted since approximately 2014, and 12,900 downloads. It has 1.75 million records. Each record consists of 26 different fields, so it's an enormous amount of data. And as I mentioned, by far the most viewed and downloaded. Arrest data from 2010 to present, also updated earlier this morning in automated overnight processes. That has 4,796 views, unfortunately quite a bit less than crime data, and 1,111 downloads. It has 1.17 million rows, so about 1.2 million records. 17 fields in each record. And obviously there's quite a bit more detail backing up what the various columns are, what they mean, more than I wanted to present in a verbal presentation. The data is large and it can be complex. LAPD calls for service by year. So we have LAPD calls for service posted separately each year, 2010 through even 2018 up to today's date. Again, updated weekly on Tuesdays. Typically, those calls for service, approximately 1 million records each per year. It matches the number of calls for service that the department receives for each year, so that varies year by year. 7 columns in each record of each of those data sets of about 1 million records a year. Vehicle and pedestrian stop data, again, 2010 to present. That one has not yet been updated today. It was updated last Tuesday, so that'll be updated a little bit later today. It has 1,429 views and 396 downloads, 6.46 million records in that data set, just an enormous amount of information, 16 columns in each of those records.
Does the stop data include ethnicity or race?
Yes, it does. The field is called descent in both vehicle and pedestrian stop data as well as arrests. There are several other data sets. Again, the calls for service for each year, approximately on average a few hundred views over the course of the years that those have been posted. Not a great deal of folks looking at that data or downloading it. The downloads I want to talk about for just a moment. This is raw data that comes out of our systems. This is unaltered. This is unanalyzed. It is the data that's used to create reports like what the prior presentation presented. But it is truly, as I said, millions of records, an enormous amount of raw data that can be downloaded to Excel, for example, or any number of other formats. The system that we use to post this data that the mayor's office selected is called Socrata, very widely used data analytical platform to post open data. And it allows several different download formats in different data analytical file types. So again, millions and millions of records in several different categories, updated primarily weekly on both LAPD Online and data.lacity.org.
Okay. Any questions? Do we have any comments? Public comments?
We have 3 public comment cards. We have Mr. Herman, Wayne, and Jamie Garcia.
Okay. Herman?
Thank you, sir. See? One-man show here. The gentleman's presentation apparently is just based on his facts. But in his statement, politically incorrect, is that none of his benefactors benefit any one of us here today. So, I don't know where he picked up that report, whether he rehearsed it or not, but what the hell does he have to say about the end of his rehearse? When you write a story, you come in here with a beginning, a plot, and an end. Technically,
You want to
his
stay on
rehearsal.
topic, Herman?
What?
Stay on topic.
I'm on the topic, Mr. Is it Soboroff? Steve. You see, in my objection of protest here, sir, is to clarify the factors of a pattern and practice by this department. And unfortunately, his rehearsal or his rehearsed time has calculated into my mind of understanding that I, the benefactor, cannot benefit from his so-called points of view. I object. When counsel comes up here to speak on behalf of what you object to, what I say and think, just once again, censorship's a bitch. Stop discrimination.
Wayne.
Right.
Yes, and again, I'm glad that that police officer was there trying to trip my friend when he crossed the fucking aisle. So thank you for getting him out of here. So, only one puppet on your show is very bad. I expect to see more fake actor police officers up here on these presentations. Because it looks like it's just a man in a suit. Where are the cops up there talking about the cops? We want to see brass. Want to see people with stars on their lapels, ribbons of honor, integrity, everything, all this bullshit up here. We want to see the fake officers up here. So if you need more fake police officers, you can go to Casting Call over there on Sunset at the studio. They have many casting call over there on Bronson Avenue. Actors willing to play cops for a lot less than these fuckers here. So when you look at the buttons, you can't push the button, stupid, unless you have a touch screen. And you have to have a touch screen on a fucking telephone. But if you're disabled, you don't have a phone, you need printed material. Where can you get the printed material? The report in the pretty handbook. I would like a copy of it because I'm too fucking stupid to run a computer and get it online. I don't know what that means. What is online? Is it like those radios you use in your cars? Code 4, code 3, code 3 with lights. You know, when we listen, well, my friend here listens to his police scanner and had to buy that fucking APCO chip when you went digital to hide your shit, but we still hear your shit. It's the same shit. So next time, please bring up more actors. I was not entertained too much here.
Jamie Garcia.
So I'll start by saying, you know, how much more data do we need to realize that we are being harmed by policing? And again, I just want to say that in no way are we saying that this open data source is you know, some type of transparency that's going to protect us, that's going to provide us any more with more details and stats on how we're being harmed. But I wanted to go back to the question that you posed about the race data. So I wanted to find out when it was actually updated, because the last we were here, it wasn't updated. So I'm hoping that I can either speak to you personally or that can be addressed after I'm done speaking as to when exactly it was updated, because you actually had someone from your department here on record stating that it wasn't updated. So I'd just like to know when that happened. And then also, I wanted to kind of go back to calls for service, because one of the things that the coalition, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, is looking at is PredPol and how PredPol uses calls for service. So one of the particular things that I think is really important for the commissioners to understand, and maybe for you as well, is that when someone calls the police, they call the police on somebody. And I think that's very significant, especially in the climate that we're in right now, where people are making it more public who is being called on. So why this is so important is because PredPol is ran, the algorithm is actually ran on calls for service. So when Jeff Brantingham sold this product to you, he basically stated, oh, the bias will be taken out because police will be going where the community is calling them. But who is calling the police and who are they calling the police on? Because that's where the bias actually starts to enter the algorithm. So I think that's something that the community really needs to know. And then as far as vehicle and pedestrian stops, one other thing that we are looking at is also FI cards. So is this open data source going to start to post about field interview cards, since that is a primary source for identifying a chronic offender?
And we have no other cards on this item.
Okay. Do you want to privately chat with her about what she's bringing up?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Which points?
You want to re-ask the question, please?
Sure. So on record, one of your colleagues was basically telling the commissioners that race data wasn't available for stops for arrests.
Okay.
So we wanted to know when it was updated.
Okay, that was the question.
Okay. Right now, the data sets are updated weekly, so I'm not aware that that data's ever not been there. I'd have to do some research to confirm if there's any accuracy to that at all.
Thank you.
I have a question, though, because I want to distinguish data relative to calls for service from data relative to stops, because people are stopped all the time without there being a call generating that stop. So, and I'm looking now and online, and you know, I'm old, so this isn't my best thing, and maybe it's just confusing to me. But in any event, I'm interested in whether or not we actually are releasing data relative to stops for whatever reason that they occurred, you know, sort of broken down by race, as opposed to just calls for service.
Well, again, this is raw data, so we're not doing any analysis, any breakdowns whatsoever. This is just posting of large raw data sets. I do want to mention that AB 953 is going into effect July 1st, and that will change the information that we collect and report by both the department and at the state level.
And I'm Commander Regina Scott, and I'll just add, so stop data is when the officers, we have a policy that says when they have to do stop data. So for calls for service on a radio call, they do not do stop data. So these stop datas are when they do traffic stops, and the stop data is when they do pedestrian stops. And then the radio call is call for service, and it does everyone. And like Chief CIO Brian Ganley will say, when the new AB 953 steps in, then the protocol or the process of when we do stop datas will change, because that will change to every time we have a detention, we will have to do stop data.
And can you tell me what the protocol is right now? Because I'm just getting a little confused, because I thought that I'd heard in this room that we actually had stopped reporting stop data broken down by race, but now it sounds like we never stopped doing that, and that it's been buried someplace or it's been available in these open data sets and just not maybe properly accessed by people. So I just want to just understand both what the current protocol is, and if you can elaborate as to what the new protocol will be, that would be helpful as well. And
Okay.
if not, I'm happy for you to come back with that, but if you could, that
So
would be helpful.
currently, so we've been posting stop data since 2014. So that has been there. What we collect is really the number of people we stop and their race. We don't go into a lot of details, and it doesn't really give you the results of the stop into a lot of details. Effective July 1st, 2018, we will collect almost 43 data sets. So that will have some information on the officer, their race, it will have their time, their assignment, and then how much experience they have on. It will also ask about their perception of the person's ethnicity, their gender. It will also ask a question as to what the reason for the stop. And then it'll ask for, and then they'll have a narrative form, which we don't do now. In the narrative form, you'll write your reason for the stop. And then it'll talk to you about what was the result of the stop. And there are pre-formed, designated fields that we filled out. And that's all done by the law and all mandated by AB 953, which you could go up to DOJ's website and you'll be able to get that information. The second part of the new stop data will then talk about the search. And if we search someone, the results of the search. And we don't currently do that now. And that will be, and that will start, that will be collected beginning of July.
But right now, and thank you, I appreciate that. But right now, I can, were I to go back to my office and actually pour through these data sets, I can determine, by percentage, looking at these data sets, the number of, percentage of African Americans that were stopped, say, last year for whatever reason, because it's not broken out by detail. Of the stops, the percentage of, Latinos that were stopped, all of that is available online right now.
So currently, what we post is the a stop number, which is generated through the computer. We also post the sex, the descent, and the date and time. Those are the elements that we currently post.
Thank you.
And that's what required by our department.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. Descent is the category that is where the race or the ethnicity of the person is captured.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2C now.
2C.
Item 2C, Department's report dated May 29, 2018, relative to the Inmate Welfare Fund audit, AD number 17-015.
I think that the commissioners have read the report. Let's ask for commissioner questions or comments on this report. This is the inmate welfare audit.
I just note that there were no recommendations, and there were two items that where the failure rate was too low. So how is that being addressed? And are we contemplating a follow-up audit to make sure that they were addressed?
Sergio Sais with Audit Division, sir. No recommendations because currently there is a policy and a procedure in place for those objectives. And this is part of our annual audit report. So we would be doing this report for 2019 also.
And I believe, Commissioner, that in the response from the auditee, you'll get the actions that they're going to take to take care of those issues. I believe there.
Okay.
Question? Or
Go ahead. What was the response to? I mean, there were policies in place. So what was the justification for the failure in the first place?
I'm sorry, Commissioner. Are you referring to Objective 2A, review expenditure requests?
2A and 3.
And excuse me, sir, can you identify yourself for the record?
Yes. Good morning, Commissioner. I am Commander Vito Palazzolo, Assistant to the Director, Office of Special Operations. Okay, sir. For number 2, that the 3 signatures are required on each request, that was simply an oversight, a review of the guidelines and the rules for the committee. We've corrected that action by requiring 3 signatures on all requests at this point.
By requiring how many signatures?
3 signatures on each expenditure request.
I thought wasn't the rule it was required 2 signatures?
Well, we were using 2 signatures.
But we were only getting 1.
I believe in most there were 2 signatures, and most of the expenditure requests. 3 were required, and that was just simply an oversight. So it's being corrected by
3 were required.
3 were required.
And 2 were given, not 2 were required and 1 was given.
Correct, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So now everyone has been updated on the requirement of 3 signatures?
Yes. It was a belief that only 2 were required, but we were in error.
Okay. And items 3B and 8B?
3B? Okay, for 3B, that was an installation of Wi-Fi, which is a system that was required for the paperless cell checks, Title 15 cell checks, part of RMS. So we took the advice of the city's Information Technology Agency on how to go about paying that particular bill. That the contractor was a city contractor. In fact, it was a city subcontractor. So though technically not a direct contractor, we went with the advice of the city's technology agency. In the future, we'll rectify that by making sure it is a direct contractor, not a subcontractor.
Okay.
And which was the other?
8B?
Yes, so we do have quarterly audits of the fund currently. Now we're going to assign 2 employees to do it each quarter, and we have a new form that's designed to address all the specifics that we would like audited. So the report does come out quarterly already. We're just tightening it up and making it a little bit better.
Okay. Let's just make sure that that in the follow-up audit a year from now, annual audit, that it's highlighted where these numbers were to make sure that the commission at that time is focused on whether or not the improvements have been made.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any other
I
questions.
have 2. In the background, it says that the money and property deposited in the IWF is expended primarily for benefit, education, and welfare of inmates, etc. Primarily, what else is it? Why is it primarily, or it's exclusively? What else? What other expenditures?
For example, some of the expenditures that we have for the inmate welfare fund are things such as clothing for inmates, bedding for inmates.
I see that.
Some of the other things are technology. For one of the uses that we have for the inmate welfare fund has been to install cameras in all cells. We've been trying for years to get city funds to pay for those cameras, but because of budgetary constraints, we have not been able to. One of the things that we've done is use some of that money to install cameras in all cells.
Okay.
So things such as that technology.
Okay. So it says it's funded by revenue earned from an inmate collection telephone calls, and the contracted company, we get 40%. How much is the total amount of money coming in? Our 40%?
Roughly yearly, approximately 300,000 yearly.
300,000, okay. And how much more does it cost an inmate to make a collect call than a non-inmate to make a collect call?
I don't have that information. Maybe Captain Solano would have it.
And I'm trying to understand the thinking of why someone who's incarcerated should pay more to make a collected call than anyone. They got enough. I don't see why that has to be a revenue source, because they. Go ahead. I don't know if this comes through the audit or just the conceptual.
So most of our revenues for the Inmate Welfare Fund actually comes from advertisement by bail bonds companies at the three regional
I'm just talking
jails.
about this one thing.
So on the telephone, we have a contract with that company that provides that service to make calls, and that's a contracted rate. We were here with the Police Commission last year to talk about that contract, and actually the price for the calls has decreased. I do not have the numbers how much it is currently.
I'm not going to ask you now, but what I'm interested in, you can come back with it.
Okay.
If it's your guys' responsibility, you're just doing the audit. I'm interested in what the actual cost is for an inmate. I'm interested in what the actual cost is for those of us who are not inmates to make collect calls, and the thinking behind why an inmate who gets a limited amount of time on the phone anyway should be paying more than those who are not incarcerated. That's my questions. Okay?
Very good. We'll
Okay.
address, sir.
Okay, thanks. It's okay. Jeff, you get public comment? Okay? So when you get public comment, you can talk public comment. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Any public comment on
We
this
have
item?
3 public comment cards. We have Mr. Herman, we have Wayne, and Mr. Novick.
So yes, we're dealing with primarily with the objection of how to use a sub or an actual contractor for the so-called inmate welfare fund. Well, one of my clients, Mr. Wayne Spindlers, can testify that the beds are out of date, the cameras are not needed in the crap house, and $300,000 wasted over objection to the contracts. Now, remember, on those 2 bunkers at the Metropolitan, there's no mattresses. You have to find them on the goddamn floor and drag them up to your bed in order to get comfort. There's no pillows. That's discrimination under the definition of 121.32, subject to the provisions of the subchapter. No qualified individual with disability shall, by reason of such disability, be excluded in participation or be denied. Mr. Sobroff, denied. And thank you for your realistic comment on the phone. Don't be denied to use the phone. Hello, mommy. I'm in for a PCC 422 criminal threat. Fuck you. But then you have enforcement, 121.33. You can't sleep on the beds without mattresses. Put a fucking mattress, get a blanket, use a pillow. There are none. Then you go into the regulations of 121.34. Once again, in general, no later than after your complaint to the Attorney General shall promulgate regulations in access or accessibility in the format to implement this part. Such fucking regulations shall not include any matter within the scope of the authority to provide objection for a fucking subcontractor, a fucking actual contractor, and get those fucking beds and phones working.
Next.
Wayne.
A visitor to your fine institution over there at Metro twice. November 2015, we had that melee outside here at the illegally recessed meeting. And I'm in federal court right now on that. And the city attorney wants to play around. Now, they want to play. Well, I had to post a $5,000 bond. 10% of that's $500. Okay, where's my welfare fund refund because I was not charged with a crime? So I was illegally detained and arrested. And then your good friends, and of course, May 2016, on the steps of City Hall, arrest me falsely on a 422A, and I had to post a $75,000 bond.
Hold on for a second. We'll stop the clock. Herman, if you can't
What?
control yourself.
No,
and
he's
you're-
okay.
No, not okay to me.
Oh, all right.
Herman,
Okay.
last warning. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So then I had to post a $75,000 bond on that false arrest, no charges filed. 10%, $7,500. Where's my welfare fund restitution for that? See, I don't get that back. But you know the fun part, both of these things are now in the federal courts, and your city attorney loves to go in there and lie their fucking teeth and litigate. See that? Look at all these attorney assholes. See? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the story of what happened November the 10th, 2015. You have some great actors. Najee Ali starts a riot. General Jeff gets arrested and convicted of assault. I get arrested along with Michael Hunt on a 409 while you let Najee Ali back in this room to speak along with 6 other speakers in a so-called unlawful assembly. If there's an unlawful assembly, everybody got arrested, but no, because you first erased the video and then you reposted the video. So now we're going to tell the story. Read it.
Next.
Mr. Novick, followed by General Jeff.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see the.
Jeff, did he have a comment card on this? Okay.
Can I get my time back? Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see the board asking a few tough questions, and I was actually shocked to hear Mr. Soboroff ask a pointed question on the fact that inmates are soaked for collect calls and their families are. So I think that if you show this amount of interest in auditing the Inmate Welfare Fund, I hope you would show an equal amount of interest in auditing the inmate welfare. If you have cameras in the cells, what happened to the 22 minutes of Waukesha Wilson that disappeared? Richard Nixon got impeached and removed from office. Or he wasn't impeached, he resigned, but he would have been impeached over 17 minutes that disappeared, that would mysteriously vanish from his audio tapes. Who got held to account? Beck finally fired one of the workers inside the Metropolitan Detention Center who failed to audit the cell. If you have Wi-Fi auditing the cells, where's the record? So, look at the deeper questions. Every time you fail to do it, Mr. Soboroff, you actually got to some of the point. It's that you're soaking the inmates, the prisoners. He said most of this money is coming from the bail bondsman advertising. So why are you holding people for cash bail when they should be out on the streets getting their jobs back, holding their families together? But you're locking people up and you're forcing them to plea bargain because they can't get out. And then you're using the money for their so-called welfare, and you can't even follow the audit trail of who signs off on expenditures. So you're dealing with a system of racial discrimination and bias. Who's locked up in those cells? It's not people from your neighborhood, Mr. Soboroff, or yours, Mr. Johnson. It's poor black people and brown people from the ghettos and the barrios of this city.
Next.
General Jeff, please.
Jeff?
Thank you. Great morning, Commissioners. General Jeff from Skid Row. I'm trying to figure out how is this a report before this commission and they don't even have all the information? It should be in the report. How do they not know the data that, in terms of a commissioner asking a question that is very, very pertinent to this very report? Where's the information? You got to go.
I don't believe it is in the scope at all of this audit.
Excuse me?
I don't think it's in the scope of this audit at all. I don't believe the questions I asked were in the scope. That's why I asked them specifically. If it is within your scope, can you bring it back? If not, can someone else? I don't believe that it is. Go ahead, Jeff.
All right. There's differences in opinion as usual. So, not in addition to the phone calls, there's a problem with the price gouging tactics used on commissary. You know, you can go to the 99-cent store and you get five soups for 99 cents, but when you're incarcerated, you get the very same soup. They charge over $1 for that. And so why is the price gouging tactics on inmates that, you know, have no other choice to where they're going to eat from? And then not only that, there's the conspiracy comes from, is where the food portions are distributed at a shortened amount of portions. So that way you force inmates to have to go to the commissary to offset to get a balanced meal. And so now you're price gouging. So you're encouraging in the sheep herding tactics to get people to, fall for this price gouging tactic. So there's a whole bunch of welfare and generated revenue benefiting off of inmates that's not in these reports, and it should be in these reports. And this commission that represents we the people need to be asking these types of questions and demanding that these be in the reports. How is it that inmate welfare fund, they're talking about revenues generated off of inmates? That in and of itself is distasteful. Why are you guys arresting people to profit off of them? You're criminalizing people and making profit off them. Poverty pimps.
We have no other comment cards on this item?
Okay, we have a motion for approval of item number 1C.
2D.
2C, I'm sorry. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to item 2D. Do we have any commissioner comments or questions on 2D?
I had nothing on 2D.
Do we have any public comment on 2D?
We have one. We have Mr. Herman. We have Wayne.
Spindler?
Yeah, this is a sad one. Now, we got two detectives, D3, Eric Reed, R-E-A-D-E, and Detective Nava Mercado. Now, they were promised promotions by Herb Wesson in 2016. Where the fuck are their promotions?
Mr. President, he's off topic.
They're supposed to be promoting these detectives. How can you have accountability for detectives in your command if you're not properly promoting your D3s?
Topic. Okay, was that the only speaker on 2D?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion for approval on 2D.
Approved.
Motion for approval. Second, please. All in favor?
We only had one card.
Anyone opposed? Okay, let's go to 2E.
2E, Department's report dated May 29, 2018, relative to the asset forfeiture audit.
Again, any commissioner questions?
Just specifically if the department could address objectives 1 and 6.
Correct. That was mine also.
Good morning. My name is Steve Carmona. I'm the commanding officer, Gang and Narcotics Division, and I have with me Detective 3, Rudy Rodriguez, and he is the officer in charge of the asset forfeiture section.
On objective number 1, we've addressed that issue, but because of the finding, now we have, normally the protocol is the detectives that make the deposits. As soon as they make the deposits, they give the deposit slip to the financial coordinator, and that person then inputs it into the database and the book. This audit found that we missed by a couple of days, so now what I have is I have a sign-in for the deposit where I will check it at the end of the day. If the financial coordinator did not input it, then myself or my D2 will do it. And as far as 6, it's the FOD reconciles the statements. So at the beginning of the month, within the first 2 days, the FOD coordinator sends them a monthly report. And now we're also including the monthly bank statement, so they can do it as quickly as possible.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
We have 3 comment cards.
Okay.
We have Mr. Novick, General Jeff, Wayne Spindler, 4 cards, and Mr. Herman.
Novick?
Yeah, I don't have the report in front of me, I'm sorry, but I guess my questions are, what's the amount of money that's in this asset forfeiture fund, not just auditing, so maybe somebody could answer that. What strikes me is that you're looking at, today we looked at more than $50,000 in donations to the department. You were looking just now at the audit of the inmate welfare fund, which is where you're soaking the prisoners themselves to pay for things that should be human rights inside the prison. And now you're looking at the asset forfeiture fund, and I'm wondering how much money was collected by the LAPD in asset forfeitures, and what was the money spent on? How does that supplement the budget that the department already has, which takes up more than half of all the money in the city of Los Angeles? And what is your responsibility as the Board of Police Commissioners to look at the totality of funding that's going into this policing operation running itself? So I did speak out of turn before, but I do question the resemblance of this operation to Ferguson, which launched tremendous resistance around the country to the kind of policing that was carried out there, where basically the police were soaking their own budget out of the poor population of that city through tickets and fines and fees and asset forfeitures. And so I'm wondering how much money is involved in this asset forfeiture year over year, and what is it being spent on top of the colossal amount of money that the LAPD already spends.
Next.
General Jeff.
Jeff.
Thank you, General Jeff Skid Row. When it comes to asset forfeiture, I want to specifically speak to the LAPD arrest fund, which ultimately monies are then transferred over to the City of Los Angeles General Fund. And so I've put that not only before this commission, but before Los Angeles Police Department as well. And hopefully the new police chief will incorporate this, because specifically in Skid Row, as a Skid Row community activist, there are a lot of drug arrests that wind up going into the LAPD arrest fund, and that winds up being forfeited, and then it goes over to the general fund. And so what we in Skid Row, we would like that money to come back to our community, because if there are drug dealers that are preying on our community, and the money that they're making coming out of that, Skid Row is such a community in dire need of resources. We felt that money should come back not only specifically to Skid Row, but that should then become a department-wide, a citywide component, so that when the money, and specifically as it pertains to drugs, I can't speak to the other instances and when arrests happen and monies are incurred, but definitely as it relates specifically to drug dealing and drug dealers that are preying, and money specifically comes out of specific communities. If LAPD can put forth a presentation such as today with detailed demographics in terms of gender, type of arrest and things of that sort, they can come with the specificity that is needed to know exactly what area, what type of incident it was. And so with that would be create a new source of revenue, and then that would be how you build communities, and so that we wouldn't have to compromise LAPD's own funding, but that'd be funding that's coming from we the people. It could go back to the people. Thank you.
Wayne, followed by Mr. Herman.
So the biggest ripoff in the history of mankind, asset forfeiture. The Fourth Amendment, where the fuck is the Fourth Amendment when you can do this? So what they do is, well, in my experience with federal prosecutions, is they sue the property itself as a defendant, and then the person has to go and sue to get it back, claiming that the item was not involved in a substantial criminal enterprise. But what you do here is that you just go, like in these recent asset forfeitures of gun collections from a famous blogger, is that you set off his alarm. The alarm goes into the station. They come in with a SWAT team, seize all the guy's guns, and they keep them. Now, is that asset forfeiture? No, it's just theft by police officers under color of law, which I consider to be the same thing. You put me through this whole criminal justice system, LA style, 3 fucking times in the last 2.5 years, starting with attorneys and bonds and all of this shit, and it's nothing but fucking bullshit. The real criminals are the ones like Garcetti taking donations from developers or straw donors. Not even, and are those assets, those campaign donations, are they assets that should be forfeited in a crime? Should the $203,000 by Samuel Leung be taken as an asset forfeiture for a known felony crime of illegal campaign donations and money laundering. Of course. But the problem is we the people don't run our government. You the mafia run the government. So under mafia rules, what did my uncle used to say? Don't ask. That's right. And the rest of the guys on Skid Row with a little pot in their pocket get seized. Fucking bullshit all over.
Mr. Herman?
Such a performance. However, the United States of America, to set a forfeiture of an audit in the word of discrimination, as you heard Mr. Spindler from Encino, the critic, he pointed out specific factors and points to a pattern and practice of discrimination, bias, retaliation by law enforcement, wrongfully working under the color of the law. That's why Miss McHale right there, Klein, is not looking at me, because she knows I'm right. And I appreciate that. However, the assets, forfeiture, he's doing all fine. He just, please pay attention, sir. Thank you. So in the forfeiture, hello? In the forfeiture of the audit, as described by the two speakers, again, from Skid Row, General Jeff was right. Every point the public makes regarding forfeiture, task, audits, there's discrimination involved here. Because the point of view of objection is, how do we clarify facts? If 4 men with 1 officer and a gun can't determine their responsibilities and accountabilities when it comes to the audit. As we already know, Eric Garcetti is running for the presidency, and his task is not to perform the duties of the public, but take it in the ass.
We have no other cards for this item, sir.
Motion for approval, please. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's go. Item number 3, report of the... Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Deputy Chief John Peters sitting in for Chief Charlie Beck today. I'll be providing the report. In terms of looking at significant... Deputy Chief John Peters. In looking at the significant events that have occurred since the last time we gathered, there was an officer-involved shooting on May the 29th. And in that incident, uniformed officers responded to a stabbing radio call. Upon the officer's arrival, they encountered a suspect, preventing them from access to the stabbing victim. The suspect refused to comply with the officer's commands. After numerous attempts to communicate with the suspect, officers deployed tasers, beanbag shotguns, and 2 40-millimeter sponge rounds. The suspect then armed himself with a large pickaxe and charged at officers, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. And there were 3 officers that were treated and released for abrasions and contusions in that incident. In looking at the crime stats in the week ending June 2nd, the city continues to experience a reduction in crime in all Part 1 crime categories, specifically a 3.7% reduction in violent crime, 11.4% reduction in homicides, total property crime reduction of 4%, for a total Part 1 crime reduction of 4%. There was also a reduction in shots fired of 19.1% and victim shot 24%, and gang crime is down 25.5%. In looking at the department's sworn strength, there's a total of 10,035 officers. 28 of those are municipal police officers. The others are 10,007 sworn. Our civilian staff, 2,939. Reserves, there's a total of 400 reserves currently. 259 specialist volunteers, 55 chaplain counselors, and 1,799 cadets. And that concludes my report.
Good. Thank you, Chief. Do we have any public comments on item number 3?
Mr.
Yes, sir.
President?
Yes, sir.
But before we do that, can I respond to one request that came from your last meeting very briefly? At the last commission meeting, there was a question regarding a pending report from the Office of Inspector General. And I apologize for not introducing myself first. I'm sorry, Mark Smith from the Office of Inspector General. That report is regarding the jail and holding tank structures and procedures. The report had been started before I arrived. When I got there, I felt there needed to be some changes and improvements made to it. We've been working hard on that, and we anticipate currently that report will come to the board in 2 weeks, at 2 meetings from now.
Good. Thank you, sir. Okay, public comments?
We have 8 public comment cards. We have Mr. Novick, Mr. Herman, and Catherine Walker.
Mentioned where Chief Moore was. I'm not clear why Chief Beck is not here today to give this report. I appreciate the other officer standing in for him. Yet another officer involved in shooting, which you didn't say, but it was fatal. The man died in the hospital. So, I note that the department continues to be the most murderous in the country. And I did want to, since it's about the question of the chief of police, I want to again apologize. The last time you met, I did say that you had selected a serial killer cop, and that was based on misinformation that was in the LA Times, which reported that Chief Moore had been involved in 2 fatal shootings earlier in his career. The more accurate report apparently was in the news that announced his selection, which is that he shot 2 people. He only killed one of them.
Next speaker.
Mr. Herman.
Herman?
So in failure to the report of the police report, for the record, Chief Charlie Beck has stepped down. Unfortunately, the crime statistics in Los Angeles and Van Nuys have escalated due to the lack of education in the social reform of Los Angeles. Why is that? Because families and children living in poverty that Steve Soboroff and developers have illegally used eminent domain and the consequences of segregation, because if you're poor, go back. If you're black, you're going to go back and go back. If you're like me, I'm going to come in here and say that the police report is inaccurate, that crime is up, people are being injured, robbery is up. So where the fuck do you come with these statistics? I know that not all officers in rank and file suffered through depression and PTSD and other mental conditions, but where do you come up with this fuck report? 42 U.S.C. 1983, 14141 section of Government Code, fuck you. In addition to that, don't make no threat you're going to throw anyone out for going, because...
Time's over. Next.
Catherine Walker.
Who?
Catherine Walker.
Catherine Walker.
Followed by Pastor Q. January.
I want to reflect on a couple of weeks ago, Chief Beck made a statement concerning the case of my son about how less than lethal force should have been used on my son. But to the officers and to the people, to the officers that took my son's life, how can you sleep at night? How can you eat? And to the people out here, what you gonna do when it comes to you? What you gonna do if it affects one of your family members? When you wait for your child to come home and he doesn't come. When you wait for a phone call that never comes to you, what you gonna do? Huh? What you gonna do? You guys, it says up here on the signs, it says, in all we say and do. When you do wrong, that's not integrity. When you kill somebody, when you murder somebody's child, that's not integrity. Learn that word. Learn that.
Pastor Q. Valerie Rivera.
She used her time already. Next.
Oh, you're right.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. You're totally correct.
Well, it's always a disappointment when Charlie Beck isn't here or when he walks out and stuff like that. But I just want to say, like, I can't believe that he's even going to get a Community Appreciation Day for Chief of Police. He's not even, he can't finish out his term because nobody wants him here anymore. He should still be here. He should be sitting in that seat until his last day of work. That's how shameful of a chief of police that he is. And he's getting $75,000 for his Community Appreciation Day. How can he deserve that much amount of money being spent on one day for his pathetic ass? When he allows murderous cops to still patrol those streets. That $75,000 needs to go to something better, something good. Hell, it needs to go to the families that he's allowing these cops to kill and take away their loved ones. I don't know, where can I find out where this Community Meeting Appreciation Day is going to be so I could protest right across the street? Because this is ridiculous, $75,000 on him, and he's not even here doing his job today. That's all I got to say. Bye-bye, Beck. I'm glad you're gone.
Thank you.
So, yeah. I'm good. He's not here.
General Jeff.
General Jeff Skid Row. We have a lame duck chief who's not even here now. It's a lame duck in limbo. As much money that was spent on this fancy and glossy report that commission said was fantastic. We should, at least we could put a piece of paper and some tape and put this gentleman, Deputy Chief Peters' name up here. Out of respect, I'm just saying, you're just making him seem like he's just keeping the seat warm. He's not lunch meat over here. He's got some bars and stripes on his uniform. He's earned the respect to have his name up here. I don't understand. So it's kind of awkward speaking to someone that is inappropriate. We're talking about the chief. One going out, one coming in. It's a new legacy, a new era, and we hope that the new chief puts in policies such as physical exercise regimens or requirements for all on-duty current officers, because even in this room, there's officers that are, overweight, out of shape, and unfit to fulfill the actual requirements that we, the people, need them in order to properly protect and serve us. Because once they out in the field and they engage the community, because of their being out of shape, their brain cells are not getting the appropriate amount of blood and oxygen. They're making wrongful decisions, and then they're just relying on their weapons to overcome their inefficiencies. So, physical exercise moving forward is just one of the many requests of new programming and solutions that we're going to put forth. And so we hope that this commission also makes that, puts that in motion for we the people. Thank you.
The next speaker, Melina Abdullah, followed by Wayne Spindler.
So I just want to echo what General Jeff just said. It's not just, it's more disrespectful to the people in this room that we don't even know who this person is. It's easy to just pin a name up there, and we should have that respect. I want to uplift what's being said about who the next police chief is. It's really important that we understand that when we're talking about, we heard the rhetoric that came out of Michael Moore's mouth yesterday about his intent to expand LAPD, his intent to put LAPD in church pews and park benches and restaurants. We don't want you in our parks. We don't want you in our churches. We want you to draw back, not get bigger, right? We want you to be doing the things, we don't want you to be doing those things either, but we don't want you to be doing things that mental health professionals should be doing. We don't want you to be doing things that youth workers should be doing. We heard a report that said that you got 40 hours of mental health training. Well, I'm a university professor. Mental health professionals come out with 6 years of education under their belt. 40 hours doesn't substitute for that. And that's at minimum, right? 6 to 8 years to 10 years sometimes. And so we don't want you doing those things. We also want to uplift that Michael Moore shot at least 2 people and killed 1. So what signal is that sending to the community when this is the person who is now going to be chief of police of the police department that kills more than any other police department in the entire country, according to your most recent report?
So we got a celebrity here, Wayne Song in the house. Thank you. Got my settlement check ready? Not getting smart. So we look at what happened in the valley in Reseda. There was a big car chase. A massive fuck up by the LAPD in this car chase. They were laying strips down and they couldn't stop this guy's car. And it just kept going and going. Helicopters everywhere, media everywhere. And then it took some citizens to try to grab the guy out of the car and stop the car. It was right over in Reseda, Lindley Avenue, over there by Irwin and Oxnard. Familiar places to some of the Hebrews. So this guy, you know, you lay spike strips, you don't know how to do it. And what did our puppet police chief do? He didn't mention it in his incident report. How come? Because you like to filter things. It's embarrassing. You don't want to talk about embarrassing fuck-ups. You want to talk about things, and Chief Moore's proud. You know, he shot 2 people. He's got a kill rate of 50%. That's why he's good at video games. So, you know, this is what it is. How do you guys lay a spike strip 4 times and you can't stop a car? I mean, you know, with a drunken asshole driving it in the valley. You know, and by the way, I mean, who the hell goes to Reseda anymore? I mean, you know, Jesus Christ, if you're going to do this, go to Beverly Hills, Malibu. You know, I mean, if you're going to lead a police chase, go to somewhere with some nice places like Duke's to drink, for Christ's sakes. He should put that in the report. It's terrible. But anyway, Mike Song knows about it, and he knows the claim's going to get filed against the city, you know, and he didn't show up for Monday's meeting, so start issuing.
Next speaker.
We have no other speakers on this item.
Okay, we're at public comment now.
Yes, we are. We're in public comment. We have 13 comment cards. The first 3, Mr. Novick, Mr. Herman, and Jonathan Foster.
Hello? Yeah, there we go. My understanding is that the new chief that's been designated by the mayor still has to be approved by the city council. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so don't jump the gun on assuming that you have a new chief yet. I think that today we're electing a sheriff of Los Angeles County. It's been proposed here several times that we ought to elect the chief of police. I don't know if that would make any difference either, but I think that you should consider how undemocratic this operation has been. In terms of the general public comment I've made repeatedly, but if you do have a new chief coming in, you might consider that as an opportunity to change where and when and how you meet as a board of police commissioners You don't have to have the chief up there with you. In fact, you don't all have to sit up there. You can hold these meetings out in the community in the evenings where people can come, and you get a much wider variety of public comment than you get when you have it at 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, inside the police administration building, and you put restraining orders against people who can't even come back into the building or talk to the chief. I hope that once Chief Beck is gone, that you'll allow Waukesha Wilson's aunt to come back to these meetings and confront you about the misfeasance, malfeasance, and murderous policies of the police department that you do nothing to correct. And you'll take the opportunity, as I say, to schedule these meetings in the evening. If you want to have meetings in churches, that's great, or anywhere else. I would agree with Melina. Only the police there, the police commissioners can come on their own and talk to the people in the community face to face without having a phalanx of armed officers around you all the time.
Who's up?
Mr. Herman, followed by Jonathan Foster and Audrey George.
Oh yeah, we got a celebrity from the claims board, Song Wayne. Congratulations. So the public should know that Paul Martin Krikorian, cunt, has an expired bar license, 115953.
Mr. President,
Now,
that
why
topic is
do
not
we
under the
have
purview of the police
a
commission. He's off topic.
Politician.
Off topic?
Why do we have issues of historically society has tended to isolate and segregate individuals with disabilities in claims boards and in budget meetings?
Still off topic on this.
That was your last.
item.
That was your
Despite
last. Next
some
speaker. You're done. Next speaker, please.
Jonathan Foster, please.
Mr. Foster.
And pervasive
Herman, you can leave the meeting.
social
I've given you
problem.
enough warnings. Mr. Herman
You
can leave the meeting.
fucking Jew. I'm leaving now because I can't stand your Brown Act violations against people.
Next speaker.
Here to speak their fucking mind, you fucking Jew.
Hi, Jonathan Foster. U.S. Code
Foster?
Title 18. By the way, the new chief of police is immediately under arrest. Immediately under arrest. U.S. Code Title 18, Chapter 17, Section 1505. If someone influences or obstructs proper administration of the law, or U.S. Code Title 8, Chapter 12, Section 1324, makes it a crime to shield from detection, Special Order 40, or Sanctuary 40. And then I'm like, when I came here, I foolishly, like a fool, thought I'd be advising you on the law. And I realize everyone up there knows the law, and they are violating and blatantly, criminally are committing crime. Let's see if there's a police officer in here. These commissioners all are having you commit crime to break the law to keep your job is forced labor, involuntary servitude. To stand on the right side of justice, any real police officer will now arrest all 10 of you. This is when we find out there is no police officer in here. Every inception of this commission since 1979 is a murdering felon drug dealer. Everyone states constitutional policing. This is not true. Specifically to Special Order 40 or Sanctuary 40. Sanctuary city policy of any kind we know today is the distribution hubs for the heroin. Makes Jimmy Carter a heroin dealer. Gates, Bratton, Tony Villar, Eric Garcetti, Beck, and now probably more, a heroin dealer. Keeps way underpaid alien workers making millions of dollars for the billionaires. But if someone dies, either police or public, the billionaire, they never pay. The families pay. Special Order 40 is a billionaire's moneymaker and heroin dispensary system allowed by the police department. Where is the recording of Eric Garcetti, Cam, so the people can review the discussions that they
Next
had
speaker.
with the chief that they're
Audrey
breaking
George,
the laws
please.
called collusion and...
Next speaker.
You're a
Catherine
lawbreaker.
Walker.
Next.
Followed by Jacqueline Richardson.
I don't know if this is, if I'm on the right, if I should speak about this topic
You can.
or not, but I have to bring it up. I heard you guys mention something about something that's going to go into effect on April 9th. Well, they went into effect April 19th about releasing of the body cams. When my son was killed, murdered, April 10th, he didn't make that so-called deadline or whatever y'all got. But in the name of Jesus, have a heart. Release my baby's body cams. Because if you're speaking the truth and the people speaking the truth, let it be seen, let it be known, let it be told to the people. Let us be the judge of this. Please, if anybody got a heart out there and anybody can hear me, please. I know you passed that new rule, but can you just hit this mama plead to release my baby's body cams so I can see what went on with my baby? Please do this. In the name of Jesus, please. God, let them hear my plea. Have mercy on me. Have mercy on the people, Lord.
Thank you.
They don't care because we got a Jesus that cares.
Next speaker, please.
Jacqueline Richardson.
There was this holograph not too long ago, thought that they were having a registration of holographs at City Hall. So he said, I don't want to go to City Hall. He said, I was going to go, but I don't want to go because I don't want those people pointing at me and saying, oh, there's one of those things, and start laughing at me. He said, I changed my mind. Another holograph was walking down the street, and he said, I'm not a toy. They're treating me like I'm a toy. I don't like it. I don't want to be treated like that. Some holographs can tell you how old they are. Some will say they're 10 years old or 3 years old or 12 years old. But at the same time, they can drive cars. They have licenses and they have jobs and they take care of families. Some holographs are homeless and they're down on Skid Row. On the other hand, some holographs are on all the TV stations. In any position that you could look at on the TV screen, a holograph may have any of those positions, but I don't know how many they have. One person told me in the 1980s, when all the black shows were on television, that a lot of those TV stars, he didn't say how many, were holographs because they didn't want to pay black people all that money that TV stars make. So he said you had to ask the TV producers of the 1980s who were the people that were holographs. I'll say again that one holograph said that he didn't want to register because he didn't want people telling him, look at that thing, and laughing at him and pointing their fingers at him. And one holograph said, I'm not a toy. I don't want them to treat me like I'm a toy. I'm not a toy. And there are holographs down on Skid Row. I don't know how many.
Next speaker, please.
Next speaker, General Jeff. Followed by Paula Miner and Kirby Howell.
Jeff?
General Jeff from Skid Row. I don't know if FYI, let me just bring this to your attention. There's still 22 minutes of missing video in regards to Waukesha Wilson, her in custody death. And this commission is like just got selective amnesia. It's not even speaking to it, not doing any type of research, demanding any type of reports. We've had numerous reports here. Where's the report on the missing 22 minutes of the video? You know, what's going on with the necessary investigation for its true oversight and accountability, which is what you exist for? Yesterday there was a selection of a new LAPD chief. Today we may have a new sheriff department sheriff, and you know, so this is an important era in terms of Los Angeles City and Los Angeles County as far as law enforcement. I hope that this commission does a whole lot to oversee the coexistence and the intertwining of both of those entities. Going back to that report, the use of force policy report, there's a significant lack of cultural competency. There's a specific slide that Commissioner Johnson requested be put forth. You can go back and find that. And there's actually a silhouette of a person with a gun. And for the fact that it was shaded in black, it implies that there's a black man with a gun. That's totally disrespectful and inappropriate. And I think that someone needs to go through that whole entire report before they come back in 2 weeks and get it, clean it up. And by the way, that's a lot of evidence for the department for future lawsuits when the department admits of not only that use of force exists, but it also clarifies with specificity of the. It's a lot. Anyway, I don't want to give away a whole lot of stuff because I've had opportunities to sue Los Angeles Police Department based on false arrest many times, and I didn't want to steal money from the taxpayers, but be careful.
The next speaker, Paula Minor, Kirby Howell, Melina Abdullah.
Morning.
I first would like to express my concern with the endorsement of Michael Moore, a man who many people here have spoken about and who have spoken on the fact that he's responsible for 2 shootings, 1 fatal. More than that, I would like to express my concern with the fact that Michael Moore, when he was sergeant, was known for misleading data that led to the department using automated crime mapping systems. Another thing that we've spoken about here, automated crime mapping systems do not work. They are not objective. They work on algorithm bias. The same bias that these algorithms use continue to demonize the same people that police have. And so I think that when you guys discuss transparency, and particularly when you speak about technology, which the LAPD is heavily into the use of drones, putting money into more technology into policing. What happens with this idea of transparency is that you sort of cloud people's mind with jargon and where we've sat here and listened to people talk about things like transparency and reports, but we don't get to the crux of the issue, which is that things like predictive policing and suffer from algorithm bias, and they suffer from the same algorithm bias that is the reason why you kill so many people. And so I think that it's very concerning to have a man that everyone is endorsing and seems so happy to have as a new chief who has already shown a practice of bias and unlawful killing. So that's my first point. My next point is to when we had the statistics about that there is a 10% increase in officer-involved shootings. I find that incredibly concerning when, as the facts that you have presented, crime is down, violent crime is down, rape, murder is down, and yet we still have an increase in officer-involved shootings. It proves that whatever de-escalation tactics that you're using are clearly not working because we have less crimes, yet more people being killed for these crimes. Also, the impact device, there is no clarity on what that is.
Next speaker, please.
The next speaker's
Next speaker, please.
Melina Abdullah, followed by Wayne Spindler and Laura Smith.
Conditions, is it on? I just wanted to speak to the conditions of these police commission meetings, which are public meetings. You all are appointed officials, and you should understand what your role is. There's been a pattern of your criminalization and condemnation of the people who take time out of our day, our work day, to come here and speak to you because we are engaged citizens. What you all do is criminalize us and condemn us for really stepping into, today is election day, right? If we think about what democracy is ruled by the people. That means what we're doing is engaging in a democratic process, but you all are making it undemocratic by the way that we're treated. And so I want to point out, both that rhetoric that you continue to use. I think most of you on this dais have used rhetoric that condemns the people who come here. Most of you. And I think it's important that you stop doing that. Hopefully this will be a shift that happens with the new police chief, but more specifically, there's a new practice that we haven't seen happen for a while, or we haven't seen happen before, which is the prohibition of water coming into police commission meetings. We've been here now for, 3 hours, 4 hours? we should be allowed to have water. If you think about what happens even when you go onto a plane, right? No, you're not allowed to carry water through the security checkpoint, but there is access to water. So if you're not going to allow us to have liquids in here, then you need to provide us with water if you don't want us to carry our own. Finally, the expansion of these police roles needs to stop. So if you're going to reserve these 2 roles for police, they need to be marked. And you need to keep them in their roles and keep them out of ours.
Wayne Spindler.
All good points. They wouldn't let me bring my coffee in today. All the water's outside. Why do you do it? Subjugation. That's what you do. It's a psychological tactic. Subjugation. Instill fear in people. Call it an open meeting, but make it fearful. That's right. And that's what you do. Intimidation tactics. People know they've come here. They've gotten dragged out of here like Tud Hayes on his back. They know that they've been surrounded by police. They know a lot of things have happened when they go home. They get followed. They know they get arrested on false charges for coming here and speaking. They know this. But your attorneys like Wayne Song over there, whenever there's a lawsuit, they cover it up and they make sure it gets dismissed. And if they lose, they go to an appellate panel and they make sure they get judges on the take that rule in favor of the city. So you can continue your hegemony. This is nothing but a government-sponsored criminal RICO enterprise. That's all it is. We don't get to vote for the police chief. I stopped voting. I canceled my voter registration. Day after I got arrested in that 422 by Herb Wesson, I'm fucking done with it. I'm just done with all of it. There's no democracy. I'm done with it. It's representation by litigation. And they fight. They've got 15 city attorneys right now fighting my 3 lawsuits. Shameful. 15 fucking lawyers fighting these cases. And you know, it's the same shit. All they have to do is open up a checkbook and buy me off like the next hooker like fucking Beck does. But they don't want to do it, see? Dumb fucking look on their face. So this goes on and on. It's hegemony, it's power, it's whoever sits in the chair today's got the power. But someday, you'll be in that jail cell. You'll be picked up on a charge. And then what are you going to do? You're not going to handle it very well. You put me through hell for the last 2.5 years. His shit will continue.
The next speaker, Laura Smith, followed by Adam Smith and Jamie Garcia.
I've raised this concern at meetings or a meeting before, and have been continuing to notice a pattern of it doesn't seem everyone votes on each item when items are approved. And every vote needs people to actually vote for it to pass. There needs to be an affirmative aye if something's going to pass. This is not just an administrative issue. People are dying because of the way this commission rubber stamps things. And maybe it doesn't seem that way in this physical room, and maybe part of that is if your own lives are also removed from that violence. But it is violent. It's not something to get lazy about. Where can I find online a document that lays out how meetings run here? What you all behind this divider are upheld to? You've been responding to other questions today.
You're talking about our agenda? You're talking about the Brown Act? I don't know. what you're talking about.
Online,
Our agenda, Brown Act. Next speaker, please.
there's a document of
Called the
pages.
Brown Act? Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think you're speaking a little disrespectfully to me right now. There's a document that was dated 2015 on your website under the miscellaneous section, and it outlines the public meetings and the rules of the
Speaker,
public.
please.
The next speaker is
Next
Adam
speaker.
Nothing
Smith.
about
Mr.
what
Smith.
any of you are upheld to.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
Just going back to the use of force that you all know so well. The presentation was very pretty and everything, and everyone seems really impressed on like the delivery, and same with the chief's reports when numbers and statistics are put out there. It just further like erases the human element to it. And all of us are thinking about tomorrow will be a year since Arturo Urrutia and Daniel Ramirez in Harbor Division shot and ran over Eric Rivera. And so obviously, as was mentioned, he was one of the 17 shot and killed last year, but not mentioned is that, from the time that they're rolling down Wilmington Boulevard to when they start shooting, 7 seconds passed. What's not mentioned is that in this room, in October 20th, 2009, I think, Special Order 45 laid out the rules for when officers have to activate their dash cam. And according to the summary report that was released concurrently with your ruling that found the officers acted in policy, it said that the dash cam on that first car wasn't engaged, and yet this killing was in policy. So you can keep feeding the public stats and crime numbers and congratulate yourself and pat yourself on the back for things that go up and things that go down, but it's a failure.
Jamie Garcia.
So one thing I did want to address to the Inspector General is we did receive your letter. So I kind of wanted to find out what the follow-up is going to be in regards to how your office is going to look at our letter or look at our report, look at our letter, and to determine whether or not this audit's going to happen, because it's very clear that the community is aware that predictive policing is happening, and a lot of that has to do with the work of the coalition and very little to do with LAPD letting the community know that they're using these programs. So I think it would definitely benefit the community to be aware. And that's where it brings in Michael Moore, because when the coalition actually started in 2011, I believe it was 2012 when Michael Moore came to a coalition meeting to discuss suspicious activity reporting. And one of the reasons I believe that the Inspector General actually moved into creating an audit around suspicious activity reporting is exactly because the coalition was organizing against it. So of course Michael Moore came in and wanted to discuss with the community about why creating secret files on people was actually necessary to prevent some type of counterterrorism activity or event from occurring, which there is no proof that anything has actually been stopped. And again, I think what's important is that Michael Moore also basically allowed for racial profiling to continue through this program, where we see there's a great impact on folks of color and particularly black women, where 50% in the 2015 audit demonstrated that black women were suspicious and possibly going to be involved in some type of terrorist activity. So we are waiting for the next suspicious activity reporting audit to come out, and we are wanting to follow up on what the process is going to be. But just like the other speaker was stating, Michael Moore is essentially going to usher in the expansion of predictive policing and programs like LASER, which by 2019 you want to have throughout all communities, and we still know very little about it.
We have no other cards on this item. We're now on closed session. We have 2 comment cards on 5A1. We have Mr. Novick and Mr. Spindler.
About the other 2.
The same. Mr. Spindler on 5A2 and 5A3, Mr. Novick and Mr. Spindler.
Spindler, Novick.
Spindler has one on each.
On each? Okay, so you can go ahead on each.
Yeah, regarding 5A1, that's a canine contact requiring hospitalization. You have 2 of those. I'll just so I'm talking about both of them. You have 1 police officer, 3. Then you have 3 other officers involved in the other canine contact requiring hospitalization. Later, you have 4 more officers. So that's another 8 officers. Week after week, you have these incidents that come before you. You deal with them in closed session. 99% of the time, you seem to find them in policy with the same kind of rubber stamp approach that you take with the rest of it. So, I find it defies reason that time after time you could. I'm not even sure where this goes into the use of force. Do you include dog attacks under use of force when they come up with the figures of use of force? Okay. And so those would have been included. I guess not. Obviously not shootings. I don't know if either the person, no deaths involved. Then, has there ever been anybody killed by a police dog in Los Angeles?
Go ahead. You're the one speaking. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm the one speaking. So I guess I missed my chance in the public comment, but I'm curious. Today was supposed to be a meeting, a special public meeting over in the City Hall in the.
Stay on topic, but that's been moved to what is it? 20 what?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We should have announced that.
Should have announced that. Yeah, 26.
26.
All right. Thank you. So I'm just wondering what justifies the use of dogs to attack people to the extent that they're required to be hospitalized. That seems like a pretty extensive use of a dog. I don't know how much the dogs are mistreated to train them to be able to
comment
attack.
on the other one also?
Yeah, I still have 7 seconds. How the dogs being mistreated to the extent they can be trained to attack people to the point that they require hospitalization.
Go to the other one, please.
Yeah, the other one is 5A3. It says officer involved shooting, and then it says number 4717. So we just heard that Dog and Pony Show of the use of force report that said there were 44 shootings, and this is an incident. Now, I guess the dog attacks also account because you have number 4417 was a dog attack, but you have officer involved shooting OIS number 4717. That means by June 19th of last year there were 47 substantial incidents, some of which were officer involved shootings. I find it hard to believe that you have 47 by June 19th and only 44 in the entire year. So I think there's some discrepancy in the kind of reporting you're getting, and you should look into it.
Thank you.
Okay, then we have Mr. Spindler on 5A1, 5A2, and 5A3.
And that's it?
And that's it.
Spindler?
So go ahead here.
Yes, so as an animal, I take great umbrage. Is that the word, umbrage? Yes, regarding our good friends, the canine puppies. Roar! That's right, that's what they sounded like when the fucking police officer 3 put that poor puppy and tried to take a chunk of the ass out of A. Ortega, requiring hospitalization. Puppies turned into mass murdering animals. Roar! Yes, they turn into killers. Roar! That's right, and then they start out as little puppies and turn into killer canines. And if we had the audio, which would have been provided today, we would have heard the scream of A. Ortega. He would have said, "Oh, I have a treat for you, puppy." Little did he know that this was a Nazi-trained canine killer from the LAPD that was going to take a chunk out of his ass as soon as he turned his fucking head. And the police officer 3, the human, is at fault. What? Where's the dog? The dog should be here to testify before this criminal trial here. Why is it Mr. Song bringing the canine in here for testimony? Let us see the dog. Where the fuck is the dog on 5A1? What is his name? Is his name Hitler? Is his name Gerstad? Is his name Jake Soborov? Who the fuck is this canine and what is his name? And when he bends over, what is his name? Canine contact. That's what they call it. This is disgusting. So I say, Police Officer 3, you need to lose your badge for doing this terrible deed.
Okay, so I get the 2.
You take this shit.
Well, I mean, the puppet says it perfectly, right? You got a canine contact requiring hospitalization. What does it mean? Is it a bite?
No.
Interruption, first warning. All right. Is it a scratch? Is it a menacing growl? What is this canine contact? Just say he got bit. Was S. Bright given a rabies test? Did the canine have his shots? Why isn't the fucking dog here today? One of the things you want to do is bring the dog here today and see what his interaction is with these 2 accused police officers. Because one of the fucking things you do with these canine cases is determine intent. Let's bring the dog in here right now with these 2 officers and give them a test. Let's see if they get violent. Now, if they go up to Steve, any canine knows to turn his fucking head and run. But if you put Cynthia in front of that canine and he charges at her, you know that the police officers are teaching the dog to attack black people. This is one of these issues. It's the liability of the city. That's why this guy Wayne Song is here. This is not a police officer review. It's a legal liability review for the city masquerading as a police disciplinary case. Or you would not have him here. He's not with the police commission. He doesn't have a goddamn thing to do with anything except the city's liability. So S. Bright apparently has a liability claim for him being attacked by Mr.
Okay, you want to do the last one? Or?
Yeah, so go ahead. There.
Officer involved shooting, my favorite. So, what happens? Biddy biddy boom boom, biddy biddy boom boom, Hauka. So the victim's name is some foreign sounding name, Hauka. It looks Hawaiian to me. I don't know if they have these fucking people from Hawaii out here with all the lava. No, I don't know. Now, the good news, there's no dogs in this fucking item, but the bad news, we have a racial minority being shot by fucking cops. 1 cop, 3. 2 police, 2. 1 police, 1. These are minor players in the games. Where's the lieutenant? Where's the sergeant? Well, Mr. Song, where's the commander of this unit of killers? Who were in charge? Who gave the authorization to give cops the right to shoot anybody they see June 19, 2017? Because you bring the cops here with that gentleman from the union. What's his name? Detective
Lolly.
Oh, yeah. Lolly, lolly, lolly.
Off topic.
So,
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 5A1, 2, and 3 in accordance to Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. The Executive Director will report out.
As to item 5A1, canine contact 44-17. Chief's recommendations adopted relevant to deployment 3-0. Chief's recommendations adopted post canine 3-0. No finding on contact. Item 5A2, canine contact 052-17. Chief's recommendations adopted as amended. Unanimous 3-0. On OIS 047-17, Chief's recommendations adopted 3-0. That concludes the report.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second, all in favor? Aye.
This is Koreatown. My name is Hwang Bae Kim. You watch LA City View, Channel 35. Our city, our channel.
It's time again for Adopt a Pet Today, sponsored by the Pet Care Foundation. We've got a great show for you today. We're at Best Friends Animal Sanctuary in Mission Hills.